Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Tip-Off, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's two-game NBA slate. It's been a week since we've been with you all. Hope you enjoyed the All-Star break. Joining me today, we have Dr. Ben Rasa and Chris Spags. Guys, how are we doing? How was your break? I mean, I guess you guys didn't really have a break, but fill us in on what you've been doing.
I honestly don't even know if I could talk out loud on a show anymore after a few days off. It feels like you get off the roller coaster for a little bit and then you're back. But Kayla, you calling our friend Dr. Ben Rasa by his full name is really what's going to keep me going today. So I'm happy. I'm feeling good. I'm ready for basketball to be back.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I come at it a little differently. It's the Players' Championship in the golf world, so I've been quite busy. It's conference tournament season in college basketball world. Selection Sunday is this Sunday. The tournament starts in 8 days. So I'm quite busy, but it's a great time. I mean, I'm glad that we get a little warm up here. Only 2 games today. I didn't want to get thrown back into like a 12-game NBA slate. Let's incrementally, you got to stretch out before you get right back into it. You can pull something.
Absolutely. We are definitely stretching today with this 2-game NBA slate, but we're going to have some fun. Before we get to everything today, just a friendly reminder that almost all of our shows are available on the Awesemo Podcast Network. We have a weekly giveaway every Friday afternoon on the Awesemo Twitter handle if you leave a 5-star rating plus review with your handle and username. These giveaways will happen every week, and your reviews are eligible to win for up to 1 year. So again, if you're not able to watch your favorite Awesemo shows on YouTube, almost all of them can be found through the Awesemo Podcast Network. We've got a podcast for every sport, and we're available on every major platform. So head on over to awesemo.com/podcast to check that out. Also, we want to talk about our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. Losing my voice already. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app today and play in tonight's $10,000 NBA Slam Dunk Contest with a $5,000 going to first place. Just use promo code Awesemo to receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $20. Beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. More reads. Hope you're still with us. To celebrate the NBA's second half, we have a special deal for all first-time users of Awesemo Plus. Get 50% off an Awesemo Plus weekly pass when you use promo code Shamrock. As we know, St. Patty's just around the corner. Use promo code Shamrock at checkout. That's $15 for full Awesemo Plus access to all DFS sports, including NBA, PGA, NHL, NASCAR, MMA, soccer, esports, and college basketball projections just in time for March Madness. This offer is for first-time users only and is valid through 3/17, St. Patty's Day. As always, don't forget to hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the Awesemo YouTube channel. We have hours of content covering the NBA, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and all major sports in season every single day. Is anyone still with us? I promise we have a show today.
Honestly, we should just had you do reads for the entire hour.
See how long we could go.
I guess we don't have time to talk about it.
Well, there we go. We stretched. Okay. Oh my goodness. I'm out of breath. All right. Let's get to our bad beats. Guys, we had just about a week with no real NBA games, but I know you two couldn't help yourself with some of the betting and DFS out there. So I want to know what you guys did to fill the time. What were we betting on? What were fantasy drafts that we were up to?
Well, I know for Ben was saying Gabe spoiled it already what he was doing. But for me, we were talking before the show, I got some Top Shot going. I got a pack and then sold it off for a profit, which seems like it's getting more difficult by the day for some people out there. So I feel good about that. Did some NHL, watched our boy Jake Hari and also Josh on those shows doing a great job. Unfortunately, you could lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink. That's how I felt about my NHL lineups over the weekend. But besides that, All-Star game was fun. I feel like time flew, but it's nice to have NBA back because I know, Ben, you have all these different interests out there. You have your college basketball, your PGA. But for me, I was playing NHL and legitimately had zero clue what I was doing besides the great information that Jake and Josh were giving out on those shows.
Yeah, NHL is the wild, wild west. I dabble here and there, sometimes on the betting side, but So mine, yeah, I actually had a really good PGA week that crumbled on Sunday, which is somewhat typical Saturday night. For the MMA people out there, I watched Peter Yan throw an illegal knee to get disqualified when he was in full control of a fight. That set the catalyst for what's been an epic run of college basketball, not in a good way. Conference tournaments have just been absolutely abysmal. If I am backing your school, I'm sorry right now. It's not working. I have spared USC and Missouri for the sake of this show, but everybody else is in deep trouble if I'm backing them. I just killed Clemson right before the show as they lost to a Miami team with only 6 players. So that's where we're at. We're going to see. We're going to turn it around, though, and it's going to start on this show. We got some bets later in the show, no doubt about it.
I'm curious, did either of you watch the Harry and Meghan Oprah sit down?
I was gonna do that, and then I continued living my life. So no.
I saw parts of it. I wasn't going to sit down. My girlfriend had it on at one point. I think she was watching it after the fact too. So if it's not live, I saw no reason to do it because all the memes were already out there. But I got to say the one meme of Oprah with her horrified reaction might be one of my favorite memes we've had in 2021. I know I'm a grown man talking about memes, but I just love the way that was chopped up. And you know, I think we all got to feel something for Meghan Markle. Like what a crappy situation. I don't know. We don't want to inflame our British friends who I'm sure we're gobbling up all this NBA content, but man, not the best spot to be in that royal family right now.
It was spicy. And Spags, lucky for us on the West Coast, we didn't have to choose between the NBA All-Star game and the sit down because they were one after the other. But wow, there was a lot of revealing stuff in that. You
didn't miss much on the All-Star game front. The dunk contest was not great, to put it lightly. Steph did what he does from the outside. The game itself, I don't know, did either of you guys watch the actual game?
I watched the first half, and then I went to Shake Shack, and then I watched the Oprah sit down.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, you had a clear
Shake Shack.
I watched Shake Shack's the best
it wasn't killing it for me. Like I had one lineup which did pretty well, thankfully. NBA All-Star. I know we had some content around that, and God bless all the guys who showed up for that one. Actually doing some research. I know our pal EMAC was digging in to the historical archives of All-Star games to figure things out. But it was fun. It just felt like they were kind of half-assing it, and the dunk contest, I think, really the most. Like nobody really wanted to be there, and I didn't really want to be there either. So I felt like it was just a bad mix for everyone. The enthusiasm level's not at the highest.
I was really into the 3-point contest. That was fun.
Yeah.
Steph killed it.
Was fun too.
I didn't bet it, which is good because I would not have bet Steph. So save some money. There we go.
There we go. All right, let's get to our key news. The injuries before the All-Star break were near impossible to navigate for many people, but the league has also had a week off for guys to heal and or clear health protocols. So guys, do you have any thoughts on what to expect with games back tonight with that in mind?
I would say for me, I think that I'm hoping to get to a little more normalcy where before the break, if you were watching any of the shows on the channel, you probably saw our hosts scrambling on live streams to try to fix and update things as they needed to with all the news coming in. But B, like this show sometimes, like we do a lot of prep for this show. We put in a lot of scheduling and try to figure out the best content for it. And there'd be things that are drastically different by the time this show is done and the slate actually locks. So I'm hoping we get back to just a little more of like, oh, we know this guy's going to be out at 10 a.m. on the West Coast, and that's sort of how it rides throughout the day. But, you know, the games matter more now. We're in the back half of the season, and also some teams are just going to start to phone it in even more. So I think predictability should be a little more in play here. But obviously with this season, Ben, I don't know that we can ever say that because these guys still not vaccinated enough to really feel confident they're not getting their exposures, even for the All-Star game. Embiid and Ben Simmons getting ruled out there because they came in contact with somebody who had COVID, and I just hope it gets better.
Yeah, another barber. A lot of issues with the haircuts. I do think that it kind of bubbled over leading up to the All-Star break. It was getting to a level that was, I think, ridiculous, and we're going to, get back to somewhat of normalcy, but it's still going to be normalcy within the confines of this season. I expect even tomorrow when we have, certainly a wider slate of games, there's going to be problems. And as teams going, to the tail end of the season, as they're out of it and more, it's going to be tough. But I think right now, as teams get back into a groove, they make a push with the postseason. For most teams, barring a couple, like if you get on a run, you're still in the thick of it to grab, the 7 or 8 spot. I think we'll be in a pretty good spot for less craziness in the short term, at least.
Also, with the 9 and 10 spot this year with the play-in tournaments, that's something to keep in mind where more teams are going to be alive, more teams trying down the stretch. I know we're going to do on this show, because we have to fill an hour and talk about all the stuff, that we're going to talk about futures odds for the NBA champions. And I think there are some guys right now, or some teams who are on the cusp of the play-in tournament, that I find pretty appealing at long odds. So there's going to be more motivation, I hope, in the second half. And I agree with Ben, just the bubbling over of things. We all felt the same frustrations you guys out there did, and you can only hope it gets better with a little more focus here in the back half of the season.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Here's what we do know going into tonight. Rudy Gay, Derek White, and LaMarcus Aldridge are all expected back for the Spurs after health protocols kept Gay and White out before the break, while Aldridge missed time due to his mini injuries. Spags, how does the return of these three affect your Spurs' interest on today's 2-game slate?
So this is a weird one. I think it's going to be a recurring theme for at least this early onset of the return from All-Star break, where because you're getting more guys back as the rotation, and we also had a few of them, Devin Vassell, another guy who was also out and remains out, but these guys are coming back and their teams from a DFS perspective, it feels kind of like uncharted territory where I don't know these guys should be priced where they are. There's so little guys who pop up as even a 5x value on the slate because they have teams that don't look like the team that they're coming back to today, where if you have an Aldridge back in, you have a White back in, you have a Rudy Gay back in, that's like 60 possessions in a game, or, 60% of the possessions in a game going away. And I think that's something that can be tough to figure out, where these prices that we have are going to reflect, oh yeah, Aldridge has been out, Gay's been out, White's been out, but now these guys being back in there, you then have the rest of the Spurs team not really adjusted price-wise on any of the major sites. And I think the end result is you're going to have to really play some ugly plays, some plays that don't fit the optimizers that you normally would run, that don't fit the constructions you normally run, just because these guys aren't priced where they should be relative to what we know of DFS. And I think it's honestly going to be tough to play any Spurs tonight because 3 more bodies in there who gobble up possessions. It's just not great for any of them involved with where they're priced for these guys not being in.
Yeah, I mean, this is like old school, stereotypical Spurs, where it's just like they got a million guys, the rotations. I'm not gonna blame it on Pop, but it's that type of thing. The interesting part, Spags, is like if this was a 8-game slate, a 10-game slate, I don't even know if we would mention them. We'd say these guys are back, and it's probably a situation I'll let play out. On a 2-game slate, though, I mean, they're 1/4 in terms of the teams. Can you ignore a full team like that? That's really where I'm looking at the situation, because I don't feel great about how these guys return, how it impacts the rotations, how it impacts the usage. But at the same time, you're looking at price points. You don't have options. You don't have pivots in some of these because there's only a couple guys in some of these positions that are even, playable. So with that, I guess I'm kind of passing it back to you because I don't want to answer that part. How do you prioritize the Spurs in that regard? Because there are only 4 teams.
So I think to me, one thing that I find interesting, and it happens to work out that Kelden Johnson is one of the guys who I think is priced where he should be. And he kind of got a bit of a discount from having the few games where he's playing off the bench, not playing his full run. My hope would be that his conditioning is now high enough that he comes back to the full run. And I think that's sort of what you're targeting is the DeRozans, the Murrays, the Jakob Poeltls from the Spurs, the guys who've been there this entire time and who've been playing meaningful minutes in games or playing meaningful court time in practice, whatever the case may be. And I think that's the way I'm leaning for it. But really for this slate in particular, because it's 2-gamer, the bigger slates we'll have tomorrow and Friday, I think could be a different story. But I think really keying in on the guys who actually are projecting well. There are some we're going to talk about throughout the show who you could build around as building blocks and then just being willing to go slot machine with the rest of the guys and get 5% of Derek White, 5% of Rudy Gay, 5% of Aldridge, like spreading it out amongst these guys who are coming back who you have no confidence in, I think is probably the way that I would want to play it today, just to really build in and heavy in a way that maybe you don't even do normally, building around the guys who are the core parts of well-projected lineups and just letting the rest go random and hope that it sort of works out in your favor.
All right. Memphis has 12 players projected to get minutes for them today versus Washington. And Jaren Jackson Jr. reportedly is close to returning, though not tonight. Ben, what do you make of the Grizzlies with one of the potentially largest rotations in the league?
Yeah, they're just a tricky team right now. I mean, you just look at them just to kind of take a snapshot, 16-16, kind of just lurking in the West. You got Ja, you got Joe Val, and then you got a bunch of guys. And it's really hard to prioritize outside of them what you really do. And now looking at this game specifically, Grizzlies at home, 3.5-point favorite, 237 total. So that's, 10 clear of the other game. This is probably the game that most people will target for good reason. You've got the Wizards on the other side. They play extremely fast. They're the Wizards. They're playing a little better, but still. So I think you kind of have to separate it. Joe Val, I feel confident, that they're going to get usage. They're going to get minutes. After that, though, you just mentioned that Jackson not ready just yet, but they have so many bodies and they're interchangeable. You have a lot of mid-range options for the Grizzlies, whether it's Anderson or Brooks or Clark. It's tough to prioritize them. I don't think you can confidently lean maybe to Anderson, I guess, if I had to take one. But at the same time, I think there's a distinct drop-off with the Grizzlies after the big two, I'll call them.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of confidence for Memphis, really. And it's tough because they're in a game with a very high total here, 237 combined total in this game. And Washington has the highest implied, Memphis is the highest implied total in the slate. Washington not far behind, but Memphis has a 120 implied total. And besides that, despite that, I really don't see a ton of love for these guys and my optimization so far, because I just don't trust that they're going to be able to get the run. Before the break, Dillon Brooks is putting up 19 shots in a couple games, and that's really a big number for him because his usage hasn't been as reliable as it was last year. But do you trust him getting there with Justice Winslow available, with D'Anthony Melton available, with Kyle Anderson back in the mix, with Conchar, these random guys still getting minutes? I don't know that I have that much confidence. And we talk about a lot in these shows, especially recently, where we've had some of these shorthanded skeleton crew teams. You just want a shorter rotation. And when you have 12 guys in there, like maybe John Morant isn't as productive, even though he's still getting the lion's share of the run. Maybe that production comes from the bench and you see Ja just have a mediocre 35 fantasy point day. I have some deep concerns about Memphis that they just have so many ways they can go, so many different lineups they could play that you don't really know what you're going to get for the most part, besides the Jaws and the Jonas Valanciunas. And even then, you really only know the minutes. You don't know the production because of how that could be chopped up, just having all their bodies and being willing to play every single body that they have.
Good stuff. I've missed this chat. Someone said that Spags looks like Mitt Romney, which I definitely don't see, but okay.
No, that guy is, he's a little off, but yeah, I don't see that either. But I'm glad he likes to name senators, and I guess he Googled several of them. Good stuff.
Honestly,
yeah,
Mitt, not a guy I voted for back in the day. Not to make it political, guys, so don't get too tilted in the chat. But honestly, I like, in terms of senators out there, you have so many homely senators. Mitt Romney's at least got a vibe. I know, Kayla, I don't know, we're rating the hotness of Utah senators today, but like Mitt Romney's kind of got something going, right? He's got the hair. He's got the like Pat Riley slick back hair. I don't hate it.
Oh, he's for sure a silver fox. Yes.
There you go. I'll take it. Hey,
Chris
meaner things in the YouTube chat have been said before, so thank you, I guess.
And what's on your shirt, by the way? That looks like a...
What's on this shirt?
Yeah.
It says Carcetti for mayor.
I was going to say, it looks like something political.
Yeah. Go vote for Tommy Carcetti.
He's one of the best fictional mayors of all time.
He's got to be in the top couple. Yeah, Tommy. Great show. Great mayor. The guy, he's also now people know him as Littlefinger, I would assume. But before that,
ooh, yes,
he's Tommy Carcetti.
All right. Since we do have a 2-game slate, we're throwing in a new segment today called Second Half Preview. The NBA season will resume tonight with 2 games, and we've still got an hour show to fill. So we're going to talk some future bets to who's going to win the NBA championship. Currently, the Lakers are the favorite to win the title with plus 280 odds. The rest of the top 5 goes as follows. The Brooklyn Nets, with the new addition of Blake Griffin, at number 2 with plus 300. Clippers are sitting at number 3 with plus 550 odds. The Bucks at number 4 with plus 750 odds. And the much debated Utah Jazz at number 5 with plus 900 odds. So which of these teams' odds looks most appealing to you? Spags, we'll start with you.
I think, and it's kind of a narrative-based one, but the Jazz having one of the best records in the league, I think actually they are the best record in the league right now, definitely the best in the West. And so much debate about them, all the sports podcasts you listen to, and even LeBron talking, throwing some shade at the Jazz recently, where implying that they're not a real championship contender right now. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that was basically the gist of what he put out there. I think you're getting a markdown on the Jazz because of the media hubbub around them. And, a team with the top record in the league, to me, shouldn't be at plus 900. So out of that group, I like the Bucks to have a better second half. Drew Holiday's going to be better. He's going to have less COVID in his body. So that's always a positive for what we know of the NBA now. But I think the Jazz, really a team that's been good night after night, that has the volatility you look for with guys like Bojan Bogdanovic, who can have terrible nights, but he's going to be shooting a lot of threes. Joe Ingles as well, being a quality playmaker who can get hot from deep. And Rudy Gobert has quietly been, I think, one of the best defensive presences in the league, even though we have seen some centers have big games. He really is the anchor to that defense that can do some damage and can switch and can do a lot of the things that you need to do in the modern NBA. just out of the odds there, like, yeah, the Lakers should be the favorite. They deserve it. We know LeBron can turn it up another level. We know AD's been hurt. He'll be back. But I'd take the Jazz just being that big of a low odds play and that much of an upside for a team that's been proving it night after night. I don't mind it, even though, the Jazz can certainly fall off. I just think based on what we've seen, that seems like a logical bet to take.
Interesting. I don't want to rip on the Jazz because I do like the Jazz.
Classic liberal media ripping on
yeah. No, you're just going with the Mitt Romney theme. You got to support your home state. Before I answer, I just want to ask Spags, like what you have to evaluate with this. In a series though, with the Jazz, that's where I worry. They're having a great year, and I don't even think it's even remotely far-fetched to think that they could hold on and grab home court. Maybe they can get fans back or whatnot. When you get in these series, 4 out of 7, and you're playing the same team over and over, when I think about them against the Clippers, when I think about them against the Lakers, when I think about them even against the Nuggets, I don't know exactly how they stack up, but maybe that's me feeding into what you're talking about, that they're just not getting the respect that they deserve.
I get it. And I agree for the most part. Like matchup wise, I certainly have questions about their star power, and it is a star driven league, but to me, there's hints of the old Detroit Pistons who did have the Rip Hamilton teams, the Ben Wallace teams, who did, really put things together in a way that it didn't make sense when you look at the sum, but then the totality of the parts, but then you look at it all and it's like, oh, cool, this makes sense. I get what they're going for here. And I think the Jazz, with the fact that they do shoot threes well, the fact they defend well, the fact that they're willing to make teams play at their pace, but can also pace it up and get faster and have guys like Mitchell and Conley do more. I think it appeals to me to take a team who's gotten results in a lot of spots you wouldn't expect it. I don't know. They're my favorite bet on the board. And I know, Ben, this is sort of where you look for value more. And maybe the value is just in taking the Lakers or the Clippers and knowing that they're going to be in the mix and they probably should be better than they have been so far. But this has been a team that showed up night after night and put beatdowns on people for a lot of the year, even though they did kind of close the stretch before the All-Star break not the best. Want to take the stab just because they've shown that they can compete with these teams. And I think to me, they just are undervalued to where they should be. But I get, not thinking they're the highest potential team relative to all these other teams out there who've really underperformed compared to the Jazz who've overperformed.
Yeah, 15-2 at home. I do think if they can secure, they have a fighting chance. I would go to the Clippers. I know they're gutless, and how they blew that lead in the bubble's beyond me. But at the same time, they have everything that I want. I know that Paul George is probably not what you want come playoff time, but at the same time, I still believe in that team. I think that the bubble in a way is a catalyst to find value on both them and the Bucks. It was horrible. It was a destruction, but it was such a weird situation. This is going to take on more of a traditional, playoff mentality for a lot of reasons. And I think that those two teams getting the value that we're got, they're kind of sleepwalking in a lot of ways through the regular season. I do think we'll see them turn it on. Whereas the Jazz, my other concern about them is they almost have nowhere to go. If they regress, that number will get longer. With the Clippers, with the Bucks, teams like that, I have a feeling their number will get shorter as we close the season, because I think, more veteran teams are looking to tune it up a little bit more.
All right, guys, who's your favorite long shot to win it all?
I'll say a mid shot. I think we had, I want to make sure we get to the middle tier too, because this team is just outside the top 5. And I want to make sure to give him a shout out, not just for our pal Laffy, who's busy making babies and such during the All-Star break. What a show off. But for the rest of us though, the Sixers being a plus 1,400 odds to win the championship to me screams like an appealing spot for them, where I don't think we've seen their ceiling either. They've had a lot of guys who've been injured, who've also had the COVID rule outs, including what we talked about with the All-Star break. But they have a dominant big man. They have Ben Simmons, who is maybe in the talk for being the best one-on-one defender in the league in terms of just being able to defend everybody at all times, and who has been remarkably efficient this year. You have the shooters, you have Harris, you have Curry, you have Danny Green, who can certainly still fill it up sometimes. And you even have a solid bench with guys like Shake Milton, Tyrese Maxey. Maybe he gets into the rotation somehow, taking after some of his rookie lumps that he's probably had to have in the first half of the year. The Sixers, to me, are probably my favorite bet overall on the board, just outside of the top 5. Ben, I don't know if you want to go right to the long shot here, but I just wanted to make sure to give a shout out to the Sixers, because they, to me, scream like the most old school playoff team that should be ready to put it down, at least on the Eastern Conference.
No, and listen, when you're shopping the value on Odd Shopper, they're one that I did kind of take a long look at. I'm going to go in that same range, and then I guess we can mention a real bomb before we move on. I think that Denver, again, is poised. They're sitting at 30-1. That's just, they've shown that they can get there. They can compete. They've got everything that I want. Jamal Murray, I think, is better than most. Jokic, of course, does what he does, and they do have plenty of experience. Now, the West
Porter
is,
Jr.
Yeah, Michael Porter Jr. What could you not? They got everything.
How can you leave him out, Ben, on this show of all
no
shows?
respect. That's a poor effort by me. I trust them a little more in a series, and I think again, you're talking 30-1 now. You'll probably want to hedge out of that if they can get to where they were in a situation like the bubble. But they're a team I have my eye on. I may take a position as we get to the playoffs.
I like that, Ben. I'm with you.
Yeah, come on aboard. Are you going for any real long like? The NBA is tough because it's not like March Madness. It's a series. Like Spags, is there anyone like way down there in the Knicks territory or any of the bozos?
Thunder.
I won't go quite Knicks territory, but I like the Warriors at plus 16,000 odds just because I don't think we've seen their, not to talk about NBA teams like Pokemon, but I'm going to talk about an NBA team like a Pokemon. We haven't seen their fully evolved form yet. And there are rumors too that they might be in the trade market as well for various guys, but I've heard some Victor Oladipo rumors starting to pop up a little bit more with them. I think trying to spin Wiggins for him, which to me would be an immediate upgrade, even though Oladipo, I think for the most part, the NBA diehards out there, especially guys who've been playing DFS every day, guys and gals who've been playing DFS every day, will be like, yeah, Oladipo's been trashed, but he started to look better before the All-Star break. I think figuring out his role with John Wall, the minutes being staggered, Eric Gordon being out a little probably helps too with him finding his form more. But if the Warriors get one of these, these top line acquisitions or guys that should be, and they also have a team that's getting better, that's spreading the ball around. Wiseman has still got to figure himself out as a guy who can be a volatile player, but should be able to give some better results off the bench. I like what the Warriors are doing right now. And, right now they're barely on the cusp of the play-in tournament, but this is a team that to me, to quote Ben's favorite March Madness, they can get hot right now. They can embrace the volatility, start bombing away from three and go on one of these runs that carries them to the finals. And I think that's also a fun story. So it's got the narrative, it's got ties into March Madness, all the things that we like here for the Warriors at plus 16,000.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough, at least they've got some, I'm going to do a similar wavelength. I think it's a little more realistic. I'm going to go to the Blazers. They're 85-1. Same concept as Spags talking about. Their ceiling, I think, is good enough to compete with the big teams. They just can't sustain it in a series. Like when you have Lillard, he can, and we've seen this time and time again, he can win a game single-handedly. He can steal one. He can extend a series. Can he win 4 out of 7? Probably not. And that's why they're not going to win the championship. But they get a little healthier. They've got, in some circumstances, the best player on the floor. 85-1. If you think they can win that first round series, you can look for a hedge. That's not the worst number in the world.
Yeah, McCollum and Nurkic coming back. That was one that I had my eye on too. Like that's a team that, and I think for all these odds, really the teams that are materially going to get better. Also, people are doing best ball drafts out there on DraftKings. I think that was something I tried to target too, was teams that are either going to have, guys that could get traded, teams that could have guys that project well, but should project better because of the players that they could lose in trades, or they could add guys who are going to add value. And I think the Blazers, to me, they're undervalued right now, but I think especially undervalued when consider they're going to get 2 of their best 3 players back within the next couple of weeks.
Surprised neither of you said the Suns.
The Suns are honestly kind of low, and I think they're another team too that's taken a bit of a narrative drop, like plus 3,300 odds. The Heat too. I mean, the Heat have been not great this year, but plus 4,600. I feel like that's not bad. But I think some of these teams that people are just not used to being good, maybe there's a little more value. Ben, I don't know if you have any sort of thoughts on that, but I could see people just being down on the Suns because they're the Suns, even though they've clearly been one of the best teams in the Western Conference this year.
Yeah, they have. I don't know. I tend with the NBA to like buy into these, like, again, stereotypical things of like, you got to take your lumps in the playoffs and then you break through. Like, no, the Suns have been trying to get into the playoffs, not win anything. So like to think that they're the same odds as the Celtics, right next to the Nuggets, like those teams are battle tested year after year in the playoffs. The Suns are looking to get to the playoffs, and they're going to. They were great in the bubble. It's hard for me to think that, similar to like what the Mavericks were doing. I love Luka. I don't think that they're ready to just break through yet. They have to get beat by the Lakers a million times, and then eventually they'll probably break through. So I think we're a couple years away for the Suns doing anything real.
All I know is it cannot be the Brooklyn Nets this year. Like,
that could be a problem.
No.
I hope not, but
Katie can't get another ring. And if Katie and Harden get one without Westbrook, my Thunder heart will be destroyed.
That would be sad.
I like the Nets. I'm happy for them. And I was living in Brooklyn before I moved out to LA, and I enjoy the borough. And I think, they're really a fun team. Harden is one of my favorite guys this year. And I know people maybe want to dog him for the beginning part of the year, but he did what you're supposed to do in this league. You're supposed to tank yourself to get out of town. And he did that. And now he and Kyrie figured out the pecking order. KD's coming back. Blake Griffin, if he has anything left in his body, I think Steve Nash and company are going to figure that out. So I like the Nets. They're just not a great value because I think, like Ben was saying, they proven everything as a team that you have to prove to pass that threshold. I'm not so sure. The Sixers, to me, I think fit that logic more, where they've taken their beatings and now you hope they emerge stronger for it. The Nets, you could see them kind of getting toxic potentially if things took a turn south, but I don't know that I see things taking a turn south for them because they've just been one of the best offenses in NBA history so far.
Are we referring to the Nets as a super team this year? Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. But just double checking.
Super teams,
yes,
they're great when they get some, like, it's hard even for the best super teams. The first year is never easy. Like, they're going to be tested in the playoffs.
True. A lot of gelling.
Yeah, it's not that easy, but we'll see.
All right. That was a fun segment, Spags. Thanks for throwing that in.
Good job, Spags.
Hey, anything to get us to that hour is either that or 10 more ad reads for you, Kayla. So
I think we all thank you in bringing that segment up. What I do miss, by the way, that I thought of, what happened to Go Off King? Because I missed that. I missed the soundbite.
I think we had some issues with the top point scorer odds and somebody took it off the sheet and none of us want to go back to it. So I think that's why, but I agree. That was one of my favorite sound drops. I've been reluctant to change the formula because, we've been doing the show and getting our footing and it's starting to feel good, but maybe it's time to make Jordan have to do some work and get some more sound drops in the mix. I think we might all benefit from that experience. So maybe tomorrow, Kayla, I don't know.
Could not agree more. All right. We'll have Jordan get right on that. All right, let's head over to our one-on-one segment, back to tonight's slate. In these battles between stars, which player would you rather have in NBA DFS or prop bets tonight? We're going to start with Luka Doncic had a mostly quiet all-star game while Bradley Beal asserted himself as a top scorer in the league in his first all-star start. Spags, which superstar do you want in this one-on-one, Luka versus Beal?
So from a DFS perspective, I think these guys actually project as two of the better value plays on the slate, which sounds crazy because they're so expensive. But as we talked about earlier, with the prices moving around, with all these guys being priced up at a level that they probably shouldn't be relative to the rotations they're going to have tonight, I think that Beal and Luka both look like guys who should project pretty well at their median projection. Obviously, we'll see how that goes, but I would favor Luka tonight just because, well, Beal, I think there's maybe a potential for a bit of a letdown coming off this first all-star game of his where he looked great. I thought he put himself forward in a way that some of the other star players didn't. That said, Luka, I think, kind of mentally rested during that all-star break. Had a couple nice plays in the all-star game, but I think this is sort of the time where I'm willing to buy in on Luka more, where he's going to be getting into better shape as we go. Maybe not so much from these first few days, but I think in this spot against a San Antonio team that's going to be bringing a lot of guys back into the mix, going to have guys that haven't played in weeks who are going to be having to defend him. I think that's kind of the ideal situation for a guy like Luka, who hasn't missed many games, has been playing night in, night out. I think he comes out firing out of the all-star break. So I'd favor him, but I really don't think you can go wrong with either Luka or Bradley Beal tonight.
Yeah, on a 2-game slate, raw points become so important that even if they don't have an effective game, they could easily be in the optimal. The difference for me, it's, we get into these discussions a lot. It's really the peripherals, and Luka is just, he facilitates so much better, grabs a ton of rebounds, walking triple-double, is live for the bonuses. On DraftKings, Beal's out is more, he explodes for like 50 real points. It's not to say that he's going to be a zero in those other categories, but you're not really banking on him racking up 10 assists or 10 boards or anything like that. So I'm definitely bullish on the Mavericks in general. I think that sluggish start, they've rounded the corner. I do expect them to come out of the break much better. The Wizards, I don't really know what to expect from them. If they do anything, it's certainly going to be with Beal, but it would definitely be Luka tonight. Probably the highest owned player on the slate, but I don't think that really matters.
All right. Bradley Beal's backcourt mate, Russell Westbrook, was arguably the better fantasy performer heading into the All-Star break. You can't say the same for Luka's teammate, Kristaps Porzingis, though. He is appreciably cheaper in DFS sites tonight than the surging Russ. Ben, who would you want in this one-on-one, Westbrook versus Porzingis?
So this one's a little tricky just because, different positions and you are getting a little break. If I had the money and I could start Luka and Westbrook, I would gladly do it. It's the same formula. Westbrook can certainly fill it up, triple-double threat. That game, I do think it's going to be a competitive one. The total checks out 237, as I mentioned, but Porzingis is kind of interesting, and not to backtrack, but particularly if you don't want to play Luka tonight, that's how you could get immediate leverage. If Porzingis has a monster game, of course they can work in tandem, but it could come at the expense of Luka in terms of usage and whatnot. So at 8,600, that could be a way to capture some Mavericks exposure. You don't take the highest owned player on the slate, and you hope, maybe he gets in foul trouble. Maybe he's just not efficient from the floor. I find that more interesting than I thought I would, just looking at this on a 2-game slate.
I think that makes some sense. And definitely more sense than I would have thought about when doing my prep earlier. I am just not a big Porzingis believer right now. And I think his price doesn't really reflect the season we've had from him, where he's just less efficient in everything he's been doing. He's rebounding at a god awful rate, which I think is a really bad sign for him, because part of the reason you're going to a guy like Porzingis is you're going to get the scoring, you're going to get the rebounding, maybe some assist upside. That's obviously never been his game. But I think the rebounding is a really big part of it that's missing, where you need him to now actually score a lot of points. And I agree that if he's going to score a lot of points, it's probably better in a lineup without Luka. But Russ has been doing everything. I mean, he's really been rebounding at a high level, 15% rebound rate from February 1st on, also assisting about 50% of the plays that he's on the court for. I think, really for both guys, what Ben was saying, the logic is pretty sound, where if you're not playing Beal, you might want to play Westbrook. If you're not playing Luka, you might want to play Porzingis. And that's how it has to go for a 2-game slate, because one guy's going to succeed while the other underperforms or just, does what they do, but doesn't have the outlier day you need for a tournament. I would rather have Westbrook, but I think Ben may have won me over with his Porzingis logic. I just think Westbrook is the far superior player in terms of contributing in every category, whereas Porzingis is now basically Maxi Kleber with a higher contract.
That's harsh.
I know that was shady.
That's harsh. I mean,
practicing to be a talking head in my time off. I'm going to come out with hot takes every day.
That's spicy, man.
Spicy. All right, our third and final one-on-one for a slightly less star-studded one-on-one. Dillon Brooks was gunning before the All-Star break with over 19 shot attempts in his last 2 games. Kelden Johnson is comparably priced, but was limited before the All-Star break after a stint on the COVID list. Spags, which of these mid-tier DFS plays do you want in this one-on-one? Dillon Brooks or Kelden Johnson?
So I think they're both guys that project fairly well fantasy-wise today, and that makes me intrigued. And the Brooks usage before the All-Star break, I honestly didn't understand why that was happening, because he really took a backseat for weeks on end, where he's normally around a 28-30% usage rate guy. He was down to low 20s for a lot of games, then spiked back up right before the All-Star break. So whatever that means, motivation's there, not crystal clear. So I think Brooks looks fine. But that said, I just think people may point chase the fact that he had 50 fantasy points last time out, and the signifiers were there the game before. And we talked about this Memphis rotation. There are just so many bodies in the mix now that I'm not confident we see Brooks get that outlay of usage but in this situation. But I do think that Kelden Johnson is going to be back in. You kind of want to heat him up. You want to get him going a little bit. And he's been a guy who contributes. He's not just a pure scorer like Brooks is. He can rebound a little, especially if we do see Aldridge continue to come off the bench. You're going to see Kelden Johnson rebound a little more. It is assuming that Kelden starts. I think you got to pay attention to the Spurs lineup because a lot of moving pieces there. But if Kelden's starting, I think he's the better play than Brooks. I think he'll be less owned. And I think he's a guy that I just feel like there's more opportunity for him to have a big day, because they're getting a full rotation of guys who aren't really ready or aren't going to be in game shape. Whereas Brooks is getting everybody back in the mix, guys who are in game shape, guys who've been, just had a couple missed games down the stretch because of the All-Star break. I think people will chase that Brooks game. And I don't know that I want to be there if he's 50% owned and he ends up shooting, 4 for 15 and that's the end of his day.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on with you, because I think what we're looking at is a situation with Dillon Brooks. You're banking on him maintaining what I think is overinflated volume. And with Kelden Johnson's the opposite. If he has a monster game tonight, everything's going to adjust. The ownership will adjust. And then, the next time we're on a show, we'll be talking about him probably as a good play. The time to do it is now. In all DFS, we talk about this a lot in general terms. You'd rather be early and miss and continue to do it, because when you get it right, that's when you really, especially on a 2-game slate, that's how you potentially really do some damage. Everybody sees Dillon Brooks. You're not going to be early on anything. And could he have a good game? Could he take 20 more shots? Yeah, absolutely. I think the range of outcomes for Kelden Johnson is much bigger, but on a 2-game slate, that's a good thing. I think you embrace that. You roll the dice. It could end your slate, but it also could be one of the true leverage points tonight in a really mixed bag of 4 teams on this slate.
Great stuff from you both. Fans, if you're not able to watch your favorite Awesemo show on YouTube, almost all of our Awesemo YouTube shows are available through the Awesemo Podcast Network. We've got a podcast for every sport, and we're available on every major platform. So head on over to awesemo.com/podcast to check out the latest. Just leave a 5-star review on one of our podcasts with your Twitter handle or email address, and you'll be eligible to win a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. One winner will be awarded every Friday, and reviews will be eligible to win for up to 1 year. Best of luck. It is time for the Dr. Ben Rasa prop bet of the day. This is something that we need to get a soundbite for, by the way.
Oh, yeah, like a serious medical TV show theme, perhaps? What
Yes.
can you get away without copyright infringement? That's my question.
We'll work on that.
I know. I'm trying to think. I don't even know. But okay, the last time we had a show, Dr. Ben Rasa destroyed his prop bet for Damian Lillard of over 4.5 3-pointers as Dame hit 8 long bombs against Sacramento. Ben, as a licensed doctor of sports betting and mascot sciences, what's your prescription for tonight's prop bets?
Oh, wow. Look at that. I got to take that all in here. I didn't read this close enough. I should have done some editing before the show. Yeah, I mean, obviously on 2 games, it's a little tougher. You don't have as many options. You don't have the luxury of really digging into some of the teams that I do like to kind of exploit. But I'm just going to go kind of on a thing that Spags touched upon earlier, and it's specifically with this Grizzlies team. Of course, Ja Morant is going to be involved, but how much? The minutes will be there, but the usage can fluctuate. And I'm going to actually short his point total. It's 24.5. You can get 23.5 if you want to be more aggressive at plus money, but 24.5 is out there at like minus 125. And to me, it's a situation, again, coming out of the break, he was smoking, but what really happened was he was dominating from the free throw line. He had 14 attempts against this same Wizards team and then 11 against Milwaukee. And that really was the catalyst for 2 big productions, 35 points in both those games. Before that, he had done absolutely nothing. He'd been much less aggressive. And I kind of think that that's going to regress a little bit. The one thing that concerns me is Washington fouls a lot. They're dead last in the league in personal fouls. They need to clean that up. But coming out of the break here, I think this is a pretty good time to jump on some overinflated situations, similar to what we talked about with Dylan Brooks. I'm going to do that with Ja here. Under 24.5 points tonight is worth a shot. I think the game is high scoring, but not to the extent where I'm worried that much. So that's my favorite prop of the day, short and Ja Morant.
Yeah, I'm actually very much on the same page as Ben here, which we should be, honestly. Ben, I feel like you've nailed every single prop, and I'm actually pretty confident because I do the run sheets before that Ben's nailed every single prop on shows that I've been on. So I don't want to put too much pressure on Dr. Ben
now, but yeah, I've been on a good run until you just said that. Maybe this will balance out the destruction in college. But yeah, it's been a good, and listen, this speaks to, I can honestly say this, Jordan pulled it on the screen. You go to Odd Shopper, you hunt for that value, you can find some edges. And Spags, you've talked about this, you know, when I was on Zach LaVine, you brought up Kobe White, and he was able to get it going, you know, these 3-point props, things like that. I think we're in a good spot with Ja tonight. Come on board. The water's warm.
Yeah, with Ja, I have him projected for 21 fantasy points. I know Awesemo's numbers look pretty similar for him, and I agree very much with Ben. You know, this isn't a show where we'll disagree sometimes when we feel like it's time, and we won't just do that for the sake of it, like you might assume. But I think in this spot, Ben is dead on here, where it's a crowded Memphis team right now, and that's the kind of spot where Ja Morant's, to me, that prop line screams, oh, this is Ja before the break, where we had Kyle Anderson missing games, we had Justice Winslow resting, we had these various guys who were missing moments of time that. You add them all together, maybe it doesn't matter so much for a guy like Ja, but when you have 5 different guys back in rotation who are going to pick up some shots, going to eat some of that court time, that to me is a time when you get away from it. And I think Ja, you're paying a premium there if you took that over under. So I agree, taking the under on Ja. I don't think it's that close really. And if he goes off, then so what? It's 2-game slate. But I think that's the best foot forward you can make is trying to take advantage of these inflated lines.
Yeah, you got to live with that. I mean, you know, it's not to say that Ja Morant can have a huge game tonight, and there are going to be props where that happens, but you're really just trying to put yourself in good positions, balance the odds, and you do that enough, good things do end up happening.
All right. It is time for the No House Advantage prop or not. Guys, here are some of No House Advantage's props of the day for key players. I want to know if you like the over or under on them. We're going to start with Kyle Anderson, over under 20.5 points, plus rebounds, plus assists. Ben, we'll throw it right back to you.
So for this one, it's interesting looking at it. You know, again, we've talked about a lot of crowded teams, and this is one of them, but I am going to go over. I do think that he's kind of one of the, if not the preferred wing outside of, you know, this Ja and Joval situation there. So just looking at what he does kind of fill it up. The minutes are going to be there. And of course, what do I do when we talk about No House Advantage? I go to the projections, which are free. And Alex does have this leaning over. And I do see that. I think that he's the type of guy, kind of adds in a little here, a little there. And that's why this is the type of prop that I'd like to capture with him in terms of points, rebounds, and assists, not just one category, because it's pretty fluid with a guy like Kyle Anderson.
So this is actually, and this is 1 and 2 with where Ben is right to look at the Awesemo projections for no house advantage, which available to you guys if you go to that page as well. But it's 70% chance or 69% chance of hitting, and a nice number for sure. One of the best numbers on the slate for an over. But I would take the under here. And I hate always, and this is sort of the tough part we have this segment sometimes, is that the Awesemo number says a 70% chance of hitting just about. That means you're probably going to be more plus EV over time than minus EV. That said, I think that Kyle Anderson is a little bit inflated here too. The one thing with him for me is that when Anthony Melton's been in the lineup, he just has a lower minute ceiling and has less chance to get that court time. And he does contribute in every category, like Ben was saying. But I think to me, this just looks a little bit high for what I expect for Kyle Anderson. And that said, I kind of wanted to talk about this one today because I don't get Kyle Anderson. I don't get what's going on with him recently. Earlier in the year, you can look at the rates and go like, yeah, I totally get what this guy's having amazing numbers. He had like a 25% usage rate at points, was assisting at a high level. Now with everybody back, I just don't see how he keeps doing what he's did in some of those games before the All-Star break. And maybe he gets there today. I'm honestly very concerned I'll be wrong here because Alex says there's a 69% chance of it hitting. But I would take the under here just because I don't have a ton of confidence in a guy like Kyle Anderson getting the opportunity when you just have so many mouths to feed in a Memphis team that really shouldn't have that many mouths to feed.
All right, Spags, we're going right back to you for the next one. Jalen Brunson, over under 25 and a half points, plus rebounds, plus assists.
So this is one that I think fits some of the themes that we're talking about here, where this is actually one of Awesemo's highest under odds props on the day in terms of the chances of going under. The line is at 25 and a half. He's got Jalen Brunson at 21 combined points plus rebounds and assists. And to me, that makes sense. I think Jalen Brunson here, you're seeing Jalen Brunson tax in some of the good games he had before the break, where we had Luka miss a game. We had Porzingis being in and out of the lineup. I think those numbers inflate Jalen Brunson's prop line quite a bit here. The under to me seems like one of the best plays on the slate. I know we have a couple other unders that are going to be very important for building around a no house advantage today. But at Brunson, I just don't get this line. Looking at it, I don't get how you even land there unless you're accounting for the fact that maybe Luka might have missed this game. And this is what you take advantage of on no house advantages. These lineups that are, or these lines rather, that are affected by various machinations that have happened in the past. And right now, Dallas is going to be as healthy as they've been recently. So I just don't see any reason why you'd want to take the over on this prop for Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, you wouldn't. The over, I mean, this is a real simple one. You just go to Odd Chopper. The line is 20 and a half for points, rebounds, assists for Jalen Brunson. I mean, you're incurring massive value there. Spags talked about this is just priced for a different scenario that we didn't get. And that's why you can take advantage of these. Regardless of the minutes of production, you would be hard pressed to have him push over this number. It would take an extreme performance. And of course that can happen, but over time, this is one that you could look towards the top of in terms of point values tonight on no house advantage.
All right, Ben. And the top bet of the day, according to Awesemo's projections, Alex Len under 9.5 points has a 99.6% chance of hitting tonight on no house advantage. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Even there's only one person, and it's me, that could probably end it. But even for me, I think that he'll be safe. That speaks for itself. That you rarely, even though Alex's projections identify some really good values, rarely do we see one to that extreme.
Yeah, that's, to me, this jumped out. This is the highest probability, I think, of anything we've seen all year with no house advantage. So we're going to try to do a mix here where Kayla gets to give out the best play here, and we don't have to debate it like assholes and pretend that we want to disagree with Alex here on the 0.4% chance that he's wrong. But Alex Len out of the rotation for the most part, or at least, out of the rotation meaningfully, with Mo Wagner and also Robin Lopez providing two looks that really do what the best of Alex Len would do. So to me, you're getting a very deep discount on a guy who's basically a non-factor in the Wizards rotation. So there's a reason why the odds are that high. Like, Alex never has odds that high. So this should be the one you build around tonight if you're playing on no house advantage.
Absolutely. And don't forget our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you all to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $20. Beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. We're going to head on over to our DFS hedge. Guys, how can you hedge daily fantasy lineups with a bet like taking the over on a prop for a player you're fading tonight, Spags?
I think taking any unders on Luka Doncic would be the way that I get different today. I think the field we had projected for 50% ownership on DraftKings of Luka, comparable numbers on FanDuel. And to me, he's the guy that I consider to be the most important building block for the night. We've talked about it, the reasons why today. He just, to me, a guy who's been playing, who's in game shape, who's been fine, who probably could benefit from having just a few days off here to get his mind right, get his body right, whatever he needed to do during the All-Star break that he clearly didn't do a whole lot during the game either. And I think that's, probably by design, that just guy needed a little bit of a mental rehab for himself to come back here and start strong. And I think he does start strong today. So to me, just taking the unders on Luka, that's the way to hedge, because I just anticipate he'll be in every lineup I have for the most part tonight. And I think that's the most obvious way you can hedge always. Just if you're super exposed to a guy, just take the unders on his props and hope, or even taking a San Antonio win somehow, I think maybe is one way there. If you're not going to go the route that Ben mentioned earlier of going to a guy like Porzingis instead.
Yeah, I mean, at least on a 2-game slate, it's easier because you're capturing more ownership. With Luka, if you were going to do this, I think you would have to do points, rebounds, and assists, because he's not a binary player where, Luka could have 20 real points and still kill you because he racks up a triple-double or something like that. That's the way to do it if you're looking for something like this. But again, if you love a guy and you're playing him, there's usually a reason. So you're not trying to give away equity by shorting him for no reason. It has to work out and gel properly.
All right. And don't forget to check out the new win percentage on ROI percentage tools on oddshopper.awesemo.com to see some of the highest probability bets according to Alex Awesemo Baker every single night. Jordan and I did not talk about this before the show, so I don't know what's going to happen.
That was all Jordan's fault. Boo, Jordan, boo.
It is time for good dog, bad dog. In real life, there is no such thing as a bad dog. In betting and DFS, there are a lot of underdogs who may have no chance in their game. So guys, who's a good dog to target tonight and who's a bad one? Spags, let's start with your good dog.
Here's the thing. We have so many options to choose from then that I think it's really limitless. I will say for me, the good dog will be the Washington Wizards. I am not a believer in Memphis here. And I think this is a theme that I'll talk about again for the bad dog, but I think there's something to subtraction by addition for some of these NBA teams where Memphis, I want to have more possessions in Ja Morant's hands. I want to have Dillon Brooks having a very defined role where he's just going to gun his life out and just put up every shot. I want to have Kyle Anderson out there playing 30 minutes or Melton, whichever one of them is available. Just having these guys get steady run because they're such great per minute performers. I think when you put it all together, I feel like Washington was running hot before the break, and we saw some good Ja Morant games, saw some good Dillon Brooks games that we talked about. But I think Washington's figuring some things out with how to approach things, how to attack a team, especially, like Memphis, we're going to have Jonas Valanciunas in the middle. And I think Westbrook just driving right at him, trying to get him in foul trouble right away is one pathway here. To me, this game could get ugly early. I just really like Washington in this spot. I would take them to win. I would take them with the spread. I just feel like they're a very solid team here against a Memphis team that I honestly don't get why they're favored by this much and have this high of a total, even though we all know Washington's flaws. I just feel like Memphis is a little bit overrated in this spot by Vegas.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's only two of them. I certainly am not going to pick the Spurs. I'm going to do something. You know what? There are no rules in the show. Hopefully this isn't against the rules. I'm going to college basketball. I'm going to just give a quick summary. I'm picking Louisville. They play Duke in an hour. They're 3-point dogs. Duke is on the bubble. They're about to be ended tonight. Louisville swept them during the year. And I really don't get this line. Duke bombed BC last night. That doesn't mean anything. Louisville was resting. I expect them to come out. They're the better team. Jalen Johnson's certainly not walking through that door. Louisville +3. It's down to -105. I'm going to do that. So there are a couple NBA games on the board, but don't forget about college. Next week, our March Madness package is launching. You're going to see a lot of content from the crew here at Awesemo. So this is just a little taste of what we got going on.
You got to shout out our pal Matt Kajeski real fast too, because his projections I know have been making a killing for a lot of people out there. And you might have forgotten him because he's not on camera as much with football season having ended. But Matt's a killer out there and one of my favorite guys to watch and do shows with. And yeah, definitely check that stuff out. The college basketball data is going to be crucial. And I know Ben's just been dying for any reason to talk about it. So
yeah, had to do it. If I couldn't do it today, there's no way I'm ever getting it into the show. So yeah, there we go.
Great plug. Ben, we're going right back to you for your bad dog. Is it in the NBA or is it college basketball tonight?
It's in the NBA. It's the Spurs. It's just a simple, looking at these games. I certainly would throw my support. I don't back the Grizzlies here. I'm with Spags with the Wizards. So just by process of elimination. And it's more just a macro buy on the Mavericks. Again, they struggled coming out of the gate. I do think Luka and the team have righted the ship. And I think these are the type of games that we're going to see. The Spurs have gotten healthier, as we talked about, but you know what? It's the first game out of the break. I think a lot of moving parts. Dallas more put together. They're 4-point favorite. I do think they cover at home.
Yeah, this was also my bad dog, coincidentally enough. So boy, great minds think alike on 2-game slates. But I think San Antonio, another team where I'm gonna coin this phrase and really drill it into the ground whenever we can on shows. The subtraction by addition, I think, is something with NBA that is more pronounced than other sports. Where in football, like, yeah, you want to have your best players out there, whether they be getting catches or not, because they could be decoys, they could be used in different ways. Same thing for baseball, obviously, where it's a probability-based event sport. Hockey, same thing. With basketball, though, I do think there's some good having less guys around and performing better. Like DeMar DeRozan is a drastically different player when you have LaMarcus Aldridge on the court with him than without. He's a better assist man. He's got higher usage. He rebounds better. I think when Aldridge is in, you see these guys kind of get a little sheepish, get pulled back a little. If Aldridge starts, to me, I would take Dallas wherever you can get him. But I think really, either way, I think San Antonio is just, you're having to feed guys who aren't as efficient, whose best days are behind them, because Pop kind of has the loyalty to these guys for the most part. And Aldridge in particular, fought to keep him on the team when he wanted to leave. Same thing with Kawhi in the past as well. I think, to me, that's where San Antonio is maybe not the sharpest with these things. We're a little more emotion than data there. And I'd rather see a team with DeRozan, with DeJounte Murray, with Keldon Johnson out there. And instead, you're going to get a couple plotting possessions from Aldridge that I think add no value. So I'd rather get away from the Spurs by a wide margin.
All right, let's head over to make or break. Which player or game currently looks like a make or break spot to you on tonight's slate, Spags?
It's going to be Luka. I mean, that's really the one thing for me on a 2-game slate. I think you got to trust the stars more than anything. And I think there's really nothing that says to me, oh, tonight's a night where run away from Luka. He's going to be owned. But I think this is one spot where 50% ownership, 75% ownership, whatever it may get to on the sites you're playing on, I would just play Luka, because I think he's in a really good spot against the San Antonio team that defensively should be worse with some of the guys that are getting back in. Aldridge in particular is the one that I'm going to single out here. But I just really like Luka tonight. And I think if he does poorly, I'll do poorly tonight. But if you're going to do poorly on a night that one of the best players in the league who personally enjoys so much is going to do poorly, then so be it. Me and Luka, just two pals, ride or die tonight.
Love it.
I mean, for me, the real answer is Louisville. Really need them to knock off Duke. That's going to be important. But on the NBA side of things, certainly Luka. But I'll go, to another thing that we've talked about. I think in particular, if you can get the Grizzlies right tonight, we've talked about Ja, and we've talked about Joval, but there are those, handful of wings, whether it's Anderson or Brooks or Melton or Clark, someone's going to kind of get there. And if you can sort through that, I think those are the type of plays that you can really find, a lot of risk reward, similar to Keldon Johnson on the Spurs. There are opportunities there. I think that Brooks shorting him potentially is a way to go and try to pick up and kill off some ownership there. So outside of the big names, of course, if you pay up for Luka or Westbrook, you're going to need them to get it done. But then what do you do for the rest of your lineup? I think it does come down to those type of teams that are running deep rotations. If you can consolidate those minutes and find one of those guys, it's very difficult, but that could make a huge, huge difference tonight. But for me, it is Louisville. Let's go Cardinals. Let's go. All right,
guys.
Please.
And last but not least today, our fade of the day. Is there one player, game, or team that you anticipate you'll have a lot less interest in than the rest of the public, Ben?
Yeah, it's Ja Morant. I like that prop.
Okay, NBA.
And again, it's not to say that Ja isn't going to play terrible or anything like that. I just think looking at where he's coming in, 2 straight 35-point games, double-digit free throws, there's a lot of opportunities for Memphis to take a step back, for him to take a step back, where he doesn't have a blow-up game here. So I'm going to bank on that, even though they're a slight favorite at home. I think that Ja could have more of a pedestrian line than most people think.
Yeah, for me, it's DeMar DeRozan, I think, who's going to be comparably owned to Ja on most of the sites today. And, Ja, I think is also a pretty canny play to at least, be with the field, not go crazy over the field on. But I think DeMar DeRozan, if Aldridge starts today, and this is the one caveat where the last time that Aldridge was back in the lineup, DeRozan was starting and segmented away from Aldridge a little bit more, then, that's going to be different. But if Aldridge is starting, I think he just drastically changes DeMar to a different player, and a player that I don't want to roster at a salary that reflects where he's been playing without Aldridge. DeRozan, to me, if you see an Aldridge start, just know that I will probably be playing as close to zero DeRozan as possible.
Love it. Guys, we did it with a minute to spare. Well done.
And Herculean effort, but we made it. That's what the teamwork makes the dream work, guys. I just came up with that. I feel like we should coin it. Yeah.
And I do want to say in our remaining 10 seconds here, everybody, watch some NBA shows coming up after that, but 8 o'clock tonight, me, Jason Roslin, the Players Championship, the 5th major in golf. I will be back better than ever, talking some golf. So I expect to see, especially these real crazy people in chat, come to the golf show. Go ahead, get dangerous tonight. We'll expect you there.
Yeah, some of the people in the chat today need to go to the room and think about what they said.
Oh, I like a little low-owned Bryson DeChambeau this week, Ben, and nobody's going to be on him. Nobody's going to. So I think that's my sneak pick for PG.
Okay. See, you should have put that in the good dog, bad dog. We could have got that in there. Little Bryson season.
Love it. Well, Ben, Spags, thanks to you guys as always. Thanks to everyone watching today. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. The Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock are coming up next. I'm Kayla Knierim, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thanks, guys. Have a good show.
Thanks, everyone.
Later. See, I'm repping Baltimore for it.
Yeah, nice short, Ben.
Yeah, I knew you'd like that. Later, boss.
What's up, guys?
Yo. Will this be the most prepared you've ever been for a 2-game slate in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I've already done one show on it and already wrote an article about it.
I was gonna say.
Can't wait to still get half of it wrong.
That's how it goes. Already. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Deeper Dive over here at Awesemo.com. I'm Eric Linquist. I'm going to be taking you through the next hour of this 2-game slate. Welcome back. First of all, just welcome back from the All-Star break. Let's get things firing. We got Jordan behind the wall, and we got Adam Scherer up here up front. You know him as ShipMyMoney DFS. Adam, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Looking forward to talking about two-game basketball slate for basically the 3rd time today. Should be a good time. But glad to do our 2nd show together. Last one was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was surprised to get so much nice stuff said about me on Twitter. The Twitter sphere can be a dangerous place to go down. I was happy to, I appreciate everybody's shout outs for it. It was good to get through that one. That, I believe, was a 10-game slate. So this one, 2-gamer, we're going to be filling a little bit of time. What did you bide your time with during the All-Star break? Did you do some best ball? How about some Top Shot with the lobby down? Did you tilt that a little bit?
Yeah, tried to do some Top Shot. Didn't really get to do much with the lobby down, like you said. Did get one pack, so that was nice, but not like the really good one. Yeah, I don't know. Went to the bar a couple times, which was pretty much the first time I've done that in like a year. Hung out, watched a little bit of hockey, which is weird, but
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, no, hockey ended up, I was kind of tilting it for the first 3-4 times and ended up with a little bit of a banger there at the end. If it weren't for a dude hitting a random goal in from midair for Dallas in a game they were already up 5-1, it could have been a really, really fun night. But still, Jake Hari and all the guys here at Awesemo have been doing a great job and help a noob like me figure it out in the NHL streets. So appreciated that. Top Shot, I did get a pack. I got a Halliburton rare, which I don't even know. Is that like a humble brag? Can you do that? Can we brag Top Shot here?
Yeah, I think that's what pretty much everyone does with Top Shot.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, no, it was like the one moment I've ever posted on my Twitter account. So I was happy about that. And yeah, hopefully we can turn that around. Might have to buy into some Series 1. It sounds like that's kind of the move here at this point in time. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I own now. Feel free to buy some of my stuff.
Okay, we'll talk afterwards. We'll see how tonight goes. But before we get going, hit that like button. Definitely hit the subscribe button. That goes a long way for us here. And hit the notification bell so you know when this and all the other content here at Awesemo is going live. Also, if you're not able to watch all of your favorite Awesemo shows here on YouTube, make sure that you are going through the Awesemo Podcast Network. We've got a podcast for every sport, and we're available on every major platform. So head over to awesemo.com/podcast to check out the latest. Just leave a 5-star rating and a review on one of our podcasts with your Twitter handle and an email address, and you'll be eligible to win a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. One winner will be rewarded every Friday, and reviews will be eligible to win for up to 1 year. So good luck with that, guys. You ready to get this thing going for the third time for you today?
Yeah, fortunately, lots of stuff to talk about, even though there's only 4 teams playing.
Yeah, I was gonna say I do kind of for a 2-game slate, 4 teams. I think there are some intriguing things that are happening. I'm curious to get your Spurs thoughts, but we'll get to that later. Let's start off with game 1 here. We've got Washington heading to Memphis. Washington's 3.5-point dogs. Memphis, been playing better towards the end of the break. Ja Morant started to come alive, but a 237 total in this one. Ish Smith and Thomas Bryant remain out for Washington. Your Washington Wizards, as I believe. Just kind of looking for, is this just a Russell Westbrook, Bradley Beal homer spot for you?
Yeah, pretty much. And I think that pricing's pretty different between DraftKings and FanDuel there. You have Beal at 9,400 on DraftKings, 10.5 on FanDuel. Even though scoring favors Westbrook on DraftKings and favors Beal on FanDuel, it's a pretty big gap to where I think it's really difficult to get to Beal on FanDuel, and it's a lot easier on DraftKings. Westbrook, perfectly fine on either site as well. You are getting a bit of a discount on him on the site that will take away a point for every turnover he has. So you're pretty much starting like 6 or 7 points in the hole. But, other than that, he's a good fantasy producer.
It's a good way of looking at it. I was just kind of curious. Both of those guys are sitting right around 1.4 fantasy point per minute, guys. Both 30% plus usage, kind of look the same on paper. Do you have a preference on one or the other on DraftKings and then also on FanDuel? Is it Russ? I'm assuming Westbrook on both.
Ignoring price, I think it's Westbrook. I think Westbrook scores more fantasy points than Beal. I think on DraftKings, it's going to be a little bit easier to get Beal into lineups. When I was trying to build my cash lineup before the show, not for sure what I'm going to end up playing, but what I have right now, I kind of just found that it was tough to get. It was kind of hard to get Westbrook over Beal, and I didn't really want to go Westbrook over Doncic at the top. So it kind of ended up being like Beal's $700 savings. It was pretty useful. But, I do think Westbrook scores more points just because he does produce at a little bit higher per minute rate. You get the higher floor because even when he's not shooting well, he's going to get his rebounds. He's going to get his assists. He's probably going to triple double. So a little bit safer play, I guess.
I was going to say, everybody wants me to tilt Paul George again today. I am past the Paul George thing. I have recovered. This is a safe space, and I felt like I was able to let out what I needed to last Thursday. This is a whole new week. We're at the second half of the NBA season. Kind of going across to a couple of these other pieces. It gets really, really ugly very, very quickly. Looking at the boom bust tool, there's really nobody that's like there's a crazy amount of leverage here, which I would kind of expect. It's a 2-game slate. And this is obviously the more intriguing game just from a game environment standpoint. But I'm kind of like looking through from the Washington side of the ball. Denny Avdia is somebody who I kind of expected to have a little bit more ownership. He's sitting right now at 18.8% in our last run with a 3.6 leverage score, but he's the first guy really that sits in that Washington side. The one thing I did want to bring up, so Rui Hachimura as well, he's a 0.78 DraftKings points per minute guy on the year. But over the last 2 weeks, right before the break, he's gone down to a 0.62 DraftKings point per minute guy. Have you seen anything recently for him that kind of has been an issue? And then I'll talk a little bit about Denny Avdia too.
Yeah, as far as Hachimura goes, I think it's kind of just been playing poorly. And you've seen his playing time kind of go down hand in hand with that. And I think that makes sense. Like, we know that he's someone that can play a lot of minutes when he's playing well. When he's not playing well, the Wizards have plenty of other guys that can come in and also not play well in his place. So I think that you just sort of see, his playing time depending on how he's going. I'm not treating him any differently than I was earlier in the season. I think he is a reasonable value just because if he does play well, you have the chance for him to play north of 30 minutes. He's top 30 minutes once in, I think, his last 4 games, but prior to that, he had played at least 35 in like 4 of his previous 5. So it's a situation where if he's playing well, there's nobody really to take minutes away from him. And if he does play well, you could see that have a negative impact on Denny Avdia as well, which goes to my next point. Like, I think Avdia is a perfectly fine value option. There's only so many, value plays on the slate with there being 2 games. It's really difficult normally to find guys around the 3K minimum that are remotely viable. Avdia's played 25 and 26 minutes in his last couple of games. He's not a very good fantasy producer, though, on a per minute basis, which makes his volatile playing time even scarier because there's no guarantee he gets 25, 26 minutes. He could very easily get like 15 or 16. And because he's not a good fantasy producer, if that happens, you're pretty much dead. So the floor is really low, but I think that the salary, it's kind of just you're plugging him in so that you can get as many of you as you can out of Valanciunas, Morant, Westbrook, Beal, and Doncic, basically.
Yeah, I think what's interesting to me, though, is that they're basically at identical ownership. I mean, they're right at that 19% number, and Rui is at 5,300, and he hasn't been doing anything. Denny's kind of like starting to see a little bit more of a minute surge. I would expect Denny to come in a little bit higher, so I'm interested to see how that keeps going up towards lock. Keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on ownership. Let's go to this roulette of centers as well. So Washington, we have 3 guys that are kind of sitting there between Lopez, between Len, between Wagner. Wagner can obviously get in that starting lineup, and it's just a question of if he gets hot from 3. From what I've seen, I believe that Clippers game he got hot, just kind of rode some extra minutes there. Alex Len kind of enters the rotation randomly against some of these bigger centers, so I'd expect him to get a little bit of run here, but I don't know if it's enough to make him somebody that I really want to rely on. I'm expecting Robin Lopez to kind of be the guy that everybody goes to. He's also the guy that I definitely feel the most secure about. Do you have any different thoughts on that?
No, that's pretty much where I am too. Like, I feel so Lopez out of the 3 is the worst fantasy producer, but I feel confidence, not even the right word, but I feel the most confident in his minutes. Like, you
feel as confident as one can feel about this crappy situation.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's really interesting too, because we've seen in some recent matchups, you've seen Scott Brooks kind of go towards the size of Robin Lopez and Alex Len against some bigger, higher usage centers like Valanciunas. Last game against Memphis, Wagner started. He played about 11 first half minutes, didn't play at all in the second half. You had Robin Lopez start the second half. He finished the game with like 13 or 14 minutes. Alex Len actually led the team with 19 minutes. So on the one hand, I think right now we have Len projected for like 2.5% ownership on DraftKings. We have Wagner at 16. We have Lopez up around 20. Given the uncertainty around the minutes here, and there's no guarantee Alex Len steps on the floor. After leading the team leading the centers in minutes played against Memphis, he was a DNP the next game. So there's no guarantee he plays. But when you look at those percentages and you consider that Alex Len is greater than a 1 fantasy point per minute guy, I think that for a 2-game slate, there is some leverage there where you could, just hope that Len gets 16, 17 minutes and outscores Wagner and Lopez. But it kind of just all goes back to Scott Brooks has been so inconsistent with his rotation. And, I made the point about Wagner at times recently losing minutes to higher usage centers. It's still not like a steadfast rule, though. They played Denver a while ago, and Mo Wagner started and played 3 minutes against Nikola Jokic, didn't play in the second half. Then they played Denver a week later, and so, I looked at it and I was like, oh, cool, like Wagner probably isn't going to be on the floor much. He played like 18 minutes or 19 minutes. And so it also, like you said, kind of just depends on how he's playing too. So I'm assuming Wagner still gets the start. If he doesn't, then obviously that changes everything. And whichever of Lopez or Len starts ends up looking like a really good play. But assuming Wagner starts, I think the range of playing time for him is somewhere between like 10 and 20 minutes. And then you're getting like Lopez, I expect to be the next guy in, but Len did come off the bench before him against Memphis last time. So you don't really know. My point there is just kind of, if Len continues to be the lowest projected owned out of these 3 centers where you're basically just, flipping a coin and hoping for the best, it makes a lot of sense to take shots on him in tournaments.
So I'm curious as well, is there any combination of the two? So this is obviously not a question for FanDuel because FanDuel, the center position is probably the most brutal thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. But on DraftKings, is there a combination of two of the three that you might want to take a shot on in a large field event, like playing two of the three together, just because you are getting those guys down there in value? I expect Denny to be somebody that I'm going to have more of, and Garrison Matthews, I'm probably not going to be touching too much of, but just in a way to get different, is there a combination of two of the three that you'd be interested in playing in the same lineup?
I don't think I'd really want to, just because I think that even though they're really cheap on DraftKings, I think you probably really need one of them for it to like be a Robin Lopez game or an Alex Len game where they're getting like 20 plus minutes for them to really be someone that you want. And if that's the case, then most likely you're only getting like 12 or 13 minutes for the other guys. And, obviously it does still take up a roster spot. So, and also it would make it so you can't roster Valanciunas, who I absolutely love. And it would make it so you can only roster a maximum two out of Morant, Westbrook, Beal, and Luka. So it kind of would put you in a situation where like you have to pay up at forward basically, and I don't really think that's
no one to pay up for.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly. Outside of Porzingis, there's not much there. So it would put you in a really weird roster construction like bind.
Yeah, I can't see myself on FanDuel trying to take too many shots on anybody, and maybe a smattering. I'm sure I'll get like one or two Lopez lineups, and so if one of those do well, I apologize to the people, because for the most part, I just don't see any way around this next side of the ball that we're going to get to. Anybody else with Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just say FanDuel specifically too. Wagner's a power forward, so that is a spot that's been popping up when I crunch cash lineups, not because I feel good at all about Wagner, but power forward is almost as bad as center. Like you have Porzingis at the top, you have an overpriced Brandon Clark at 6,200, and then you kind of just have like Xavier Tillman and Mo Wagner. So I think Wagner, assuming he starts, is a viable punt option on FanDuel, just because it'll allow you to pay up at the spots where you actually want to pay up.
Yeah, and he's 4K, so he's about as far down there as you'd want to go. I mean, I don't see Anthony Gill, Luka Samanic in my life today, so that's just kind of a fact. Isak Bonga doesn't exist anymore. Anybody else there? Well, I guess we should talk about Davis Bertans and probably talk a little bit about Garrison Matthews as a punt. I'm not really in on Matthews here. Obviously, we know the kind of guy and the kind of upside that Bertans has had in the past. It's hard to identify which spots he's going to go off, but if he does it today, you're going to need him more than likely if he knocks down 5-6 threes over on DraftKings. Talk to me about those guys as well.
Yeah, I have trouble getting the Matthews. Even as a starter this year, he's only averaged about 16 minutes per game in the games where Westbrook and Beal have both been active. Getting rid of those games where half the Wizards were out because of COVID. So it's really tough to get there. I mean, I guess if Matthews comes out and shoots really well or plays defense really well, they would probably look to give him more minutes. But in general, he's kind of just been starting each half and then going back to the bench. Bertans, though, I think is really interesting. On FanDuel, it's fine. I mean, he's not really at a super appealing price point, but there's only so many options on the slate. On DraftKings, though, I think it's interesting because his salary's come down to $4,400. He hasn't been very good this year, but we have a pretty sizable track record of who Bertans is as a shooter. And we know that coming into the season, he just never was really able to get in rhythm. He was coming off of an injury. His minutes were limited. Then he missed games because of COVID. And basically, they just said he wasn't in shape, didn't have his legs under him. So I think that there's basically room for Bertans to start producing at a higher rate than he has so far this year. And the minutes have been there. He's been playing at least 26 minutes a night pretty regularly now. And at 4,400 on DraftKings, where you also get the 3-point bonus, I think he still has a low floor because he's a scoring dependent player that has like a 19% usage rate. But I think that he's priced about as low as you're ever going to get him on DraftKings.
Scott Brooks also said he was going to play him into shape because they couldn't practice because they couldn't do anything else. I think, didn't he make some comments about that in general where it was like, hey, not like we can practice or do much on the side, so I'm just going to play him more minutes.
Yeah, there was like a week-long stretch where the press conferences were just brutal because it was basically reporters being like, hey, Davis, why can't you shoot? And he's just like, I don't know. And they're like, and then it's like, hey, Scott, how much longer are you going to play Davis because he can't shoot? And he's just like, we give him
a bucket of money. We drove down the street and dumped it out on his front lawn. We kind of have to play the guy at this point, right?
Yeah, and that's pretty much what he said was, he's going to get back into shape and we don't have time to practice. So for now, he's just going to be out there missing shots, basically.
Because we have an exponential amount of time here, is there anything that you want Washington to be looking at doing as they get closer to the trade deadline specifically? Just to put you on the spot here, is there something that you would want to see happen with either Westbrook or Beal or something with this team?
I mean, if they somehow could add Vooch, I would love that, but I don't think they have the assets. But yeah, I mean, I think it's tough because I think they're just kind of hamstrung. Like you have the Beal contract, you have the Westbrook deal. Bertans obviously is getting paid. So I don't know. They're in a tough position where I think that they still make a playoff push. I thought that coming into the season. Then they had all the injuries at the beginning of the year. They've been playing really well recently. So like, I don't think, unless, you get some ridiculous deal, I don't think that you blow it up right now. But I think it's also going to be hard for them to really make a move. One other thing I just remembered from the last Memphis game, though, they did, and it's not really actionable for DFS, but I guess it's like a tiebreaker if you wanted to convince yourself that you don't need Bradley Beal or something. Memphis threw Dillon Brooks at him last game and basically just had Dillon Brooks chase him around the floor, stop him from getting the ball. Brooks played really well. Beal said after the game, he was like, yeah, I fully respect him. He clearly has watched me play. He knew what I wanted to do, and he just didn't let me do it. So, I guess worth noting, like, obviously different game, and that was a one-time thing, but Memphis did last time have a game plan that worked very well against Beal.
Sco Ducks. Yeah, I need an Oregon. I've got an Oregon ticket that I'm kind of sweating a little bit here. They've looked so much better than I was expecting to, but this is not a college basketball show. Before we get over to the Memphis side of the ball, we have what's known as the Shamrock promo over at Awesemo. So to celebrate the NBA's second half of the season, we have a special deal for all first-time users. You have to be a first-time user to be able to take advantage of this. Get 50% off of any Awesemo Plus weekly pass when you use promo Shamrock at checkout. It's $15. It's just $15 for full Awesemo Plus access to all the DFS sports, including NBA, PGA, which again, we've talked a little bit about. Probably my favorite tournament to watch of the entire year is the Players Championship. Sunday comes, that 17th hole really does show out pretty darn well. NHL, which obviously has been a fantastic thing for me of late. NASCAR, MMA, soccer, esports, and college basketball projections just in time for March Madness. This offer is for first-time users only and is valid through March 17th. So take a look at that because you're not going to find many better deals at the site than that. Let's get over to the Memphis side of the ball. So these teams did play on March 2nd, which you had kind of alluded to a second ago. But obviously, this team is kind of centered around two guys on this slate. We have Morant, we have Jonas Valanciunas. Kind of how you decide to use those two, I feel like is such a big piece. Washington has been, I liked how you pointed out in your deep dive article, which is free throughout the entire course of this year. They're 11th in defensive efficiency over the last month, but they're still the fastest team in the NBA. So that kind of makes up for it in a lot of ways. You alluded to a little bit about the offensive rebounding opportunities that might exist for JVal. Let's just kind of go through those top two options and work our way down.
Yes, I mean, I think they both look great. They look like two of the top options on the slate. The kind of distinguishing thing for me between them is that the guard position obviously is a lot deeper today than the center position. The guard position is basically the only good position on the slate.
You think?
Yeah, or two positions on the slate. So
yeah.
Like when you're building on DraftKings, it ended up, I thought, being a little bit easier to get to JoVal, and on FanDuel, it's a hell of a lot easier to get to JoVal. He's basically the only viable center on the slate. So I think that it is a little bit easier to get Valanciunas in the lineups. I really like both of them. I'm certainly not trying to talk anyone off of Morant, but I think in particular the matchup is really good for JoVal because this is a Washington team that rebounds really poorly. And there was a stretch this year where they actually weren't giving up a lot of offensive rebounds, but it's because every shot taken against them was going in. Now, as they've played a little bit better defensively, they have allowed the second most offensive rebounds per game over the last month. They've allowed the fifth or sixth most total rebounds per game. JoVal's sixth in the NBA in offensive rebounds per game. He's ninth in total rebounds. So it sets up as a spot where even if he doesn't score well, which, I would expect that he does, but even if he has an off game shooting like he did last time against Washington, he also only had a 19% usage rate in that game. He still grabbed 16 rebounds. Then at his price, it just gives you such a high floor and obviously a high ceiling, knowing that there's a really good chance he's just going to be able to grab a bunch of boards here. So I think that, kind of splitting hairs between the two, but factoring in the position and just the way the matchup sets up, I give JoVal a slight edge over Morant, but certainly any amount of Morant you get to is fine as well.
So now the big question, what you're doing over on FanDuel, because for me, I see no way around it. I think I love our ownership projections. I think they are absolutely spot on. I'm floored that JVal is not over 50% owned. I thought he was going to be well into the 60-70% range when we woke up this morning. I wrote a little bit about that in the Slate Starter article last night. How do you get away from just jamming in as much JVal as possible on the slate at that center position?
Yeah, I have no idea. My guess this morning was like 85%.
Yeah, I said 65. I lowballed it a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. And so at least, and it shows in the ownership right now, I guess, but when I talked about it with Josh this morning, what I said basically was like, everyone has, or so many people have just basically think that you need to not roster high owned players, and they don't consider like chances of success relative to other options. And so that typically, or a lot of times at least, what you'll see happen is in a situation like this where someone is clearly the number one play, they don't end up being as popular as they really should be, because X percent of people are just like, oh, I can't play that guy because it's obvious that he's the best play, when you have a million other roster spots that you can take advantage of to be different. So I don't expect, even if his ownership does come up between now and lock, I don't think he ends up being popular enough. And the other thing that reinforces that is when Josh and I were talking this morning, Josh pointed out that if you wanted to, you could, like, you have, because Luka's a small forward on FanDuel, you have a really good pay up option at small forward, at point guard, and shooting guard. And so he was like, well, what if you pay down at center? My top lineup, even if I lock in Beal, Westbrook, and Doncic, still had Jovel. Like, that's how far ahead of the rest of the centers he is. So I just think it's going to be really, really tough to get away from him. Like, I would, I'm not saying you have to play him in every single lineup, but if my only choices, even in a tournament, were to put Jovel in every single lineup or not play Jovel, I would just play him everywhere.
I am kind of exactly right there with you, so that's good to hear. I would be shocked if he's under 50% owned over on FanDuel today. Like, I would just be floored. I guess some of the ways that you can make that work to be able to jam him in with those other studs would be playing some of these other Memphis pieces between Melton, between Brooks, between Bane, between Winslow. We kind of got four little options to look at there. Winslow, 23% usage rate already in under 100 minutes so far this year. So we're seeing him start to account for some of the offense. I saw earlier some true shooting percentage numbers kind of wandering around there. This is such a small sample that I'm not going to read too much into that. He's going out and kind of asserting himself when he does play for the most part. So I like seeing that. And then going to Bane and Melton, both of them sit under 20% usage. So harder to get to. It's just a question of which site, because Melton's 6K on FanDuel and Bane is 3,500. So I'm assuming he was probably in that lineup you were referring to with Jovel, Doncic, Beal, Westbrook.
Yeah, and it depends on format too. Like, even on DraftKings, when you talk about Melton, where he's obviously a lot more affordable at 4,600, but Melton's I guess median or average playing time here, I think, is 20 minutes or less. He certainly has the potential to play more if he plays well, which is really nice in tournaments, but he's still a very low floor option. Like, you saw the game against Washington 2 games ago where he played really well and got a lot of minutes, but that was with Kyle Anderson out. Then the next game he played 14 or 15 minutes with Anderson in, which was a step up because Melton had essentially been out of the rotation prior to going off against Washington. He's someone that I think should be in the rotation, and I think he should be taking minutes from some of these guys, but that hasn't really been the case. So his floor is extremely low. He does have a high ceiling just because he's about a fantasy point per minute guy and he can produce in a variety of ways. He just has to find a way to be on the floor. As far as Bane goes, sort of the opposite. Like, he's not a bad fantasy producer. He's not great. He's averaged 24 minutes per game in the 4 or 5 games he's started with most of the team healthy. And so you're expecting him to get, 22 to 24 minutes, basically produce 0.85 to 0.95 fantasy points per minute. And at 3,500 on FanDuel, that's fine, just because it's going to let you get to other really good players. On DraftKings, it's okay if you're playing a bunch of lineups and, he's 4K, but it's not nearly as good a play, I don't think, as he is on FanDuel. And then Winslow, I think, is fine on either site, but he does look better on DraftKings, where he's only 3,900. You mentioned those true shooting numbers, and I look at it as a positive for Winslow, because he's basically been playing to his floor right now, I think.
Yep.
He didn't play at all last year. It makes sense for him to be rusty coming back. So I'm not saying that I think tonight's necessarily the night he goes out and shoots to his career averages, but he's going to sooner than later. It's really unlikely he became a much worse shooter than he was. But what looks really good is that the usage rate, like you said, is already between like 23 and 24%. He has a double-digit rebounding percentage. His assist percentage is 9.5%. So he's contributing peripherals, which is something we had seen from his time in Miami as well, that he was capable of doing. And his usage rate coming off the bench with this Memphis team is much higher than you were getting when he was on the Heat. So even if he shoots poorly and plays like 22, 23 minutes at his salary, especially on DraftKings, he's probably going to be fine. If he actually shoots to like his career numbers or better, he's going to significantly outperform his salary. And so I think it's kind of, he's priced right now. He's playing to his floor, but he's also priced to his floor. And I think that as the season goes on and as he kind of starts to get back in the rhythm, you're going to see that salary jump up pretty quickly.
One guy that I haven't gotten right this entire season, nor will I probably get him right today, is Kyle Anderson, who didn't play in this game on the second. So kind of going through that box score, I was trying to get a gauge on him. 6,300 over on DraftKings, 65 over on FanDuel. What's kind of your interest level there? He's just somebody that I'm really not getting to. So take that for what it's worth. He's going to absolutely smash tonight.
I think he's really difficult to get to, which makes me somewhat interested in tournaments. But that being said, he also is still getting ownership. Like we have him at 22% on DraftKings right now. On FanDuel. On DraftKings, we have him at 23%. So I would like that to be a little bit lower, I think. But he's someone where the floor isn't that high because he's not guaranteed a ton of minutes. Like he's averaged about 28 minutes per game in the games that he's played with Morant, Valanciunas, and Brooks all active this year. He's got a sub 20% usage rate, but he rebounds at a high rate, which obviously Washington's going to give up a lot of rebounds. He is good enough at getting assists where that pads his stats as well. He's averaged 1.19 DraftKings points per minute in the 16 games that he's played with those guys. So he's been extremely productive despite not being a high usage player. The problem is just that the salaries come up and that the minutes also are volatile. Like if you were looking at it, you were like, well, I know he's going to play 33 or 34 minutes. His salary would still probably be too cheap here. But when you know that he could play as little as like 25 or 26 minutes, there's a lot of risk. And also the positions that he plays from a roster construction standpoint, you're typically going to want to pay down so that you can pay up for those guards or, and Joval and Porzingis or something like that. So it's from an optimal build, it's going to be tough to get there, which typically does drive down ownership and make guys a little bit more appealing in tournaments.
Yeah, I guess for me, it was just something where I kind of expected I would at least get a little bit, but through my first run on FanDuel, I was getting like 8% or something, 7% out of 150. And that just kind of seemed a little bit low for a guy that I felt like might be a good contrarian way to go. For me also, a majority of that sample where he has been productive on the floor was with John Morant out, wasn't it? Like a majority of that would have been him taking over some of that offense on that rate. So I would expect with Morant back and now Morant actually being somewhat assertive, having 25 free throw attempts the last two games combined, maybe brings the floor down even further for Kyle Anderson and makes it hard to get to just from a projection basis.
Yeah, I mean, the 1.19 was in games that Morant has been in. It was with Morant, Valanciunas, and Brooks. But to what you're saying, like, yeah, as Morant becomes more assertive, that's going to take stuff away. It also didn't account for there were a couple games where I don't remember if Tyus Jones was out or Melton was out or something.
It's been hard because there's always been like one of them out in each one of these, like going through the box score on the second, like Kyle Anderson was notably absent. You go through, there's Bane randomly out. Allen's been on and off for a while. So it is tough to get a complete gauge on it. But overall, what's your interest level in Memphis going top to bottom?
Extremely high.
Yeah.
I think Memphis is the team that I'll get to the most tonight in terms of like number of players, because obviously Morant and Valanciunas look really good. We didn't really talk about Dylan Brooks, but I love him tonight at shooting guard on FanDuel. Shooting guard, small forward is extremely valuable on DraftKings, but you should get 30 plus minutes from Brooks, most likely. Leads the team in 3-point attempts. Washington's in the bottom or top, depending on how you want to look at it, third in the league in 3-point field goal attempts allowed per game. Brooks has a 26% usage rate in the games that he's played with Morant and Valanciunas. He's scoring dependent, so his floor is relatively low, but it's not like he's out there only getting like 5 or 6 shots a game. He's going to shoot a ton, and so I think he looks really, really good. Brandon Clark on DraftKings looks good, I think, at 5,200. One thing that I saw from their rotations last game that was encouraging is Clark's minutes also have been really volatile this year. And Xavier Tillman's been backing up Jonas Valanciunas in most games, which has also hurt the playing time for Clark. Last game, though, he actually got 2 stints as the backup center. Like Tillman still played 13 minutes, but when Valanciunas subbed out for the second time in the first half and the second time in the second half, it was actually Clark that came in instead of Tillman. And if that continues, not only are you getting more productive minutes from Clark because he's playing without Valanciunas, but you're getting more minutes. And that game you saw, the most recent game, you saw him get up to 29 minutes. I think there's a pretty good chance if that continues that you get at least 25 or 26 from Clark. So it'll be tough to get to him on FanDuel, I think, but on DraftKings, I think it looks like a good value.
As a great segue, I might have more interest in Brandon Clark because he's not in the starting lineup tonight. We have Morant, Bane, Brooks, Anderson, Valanciunas. That just hit for the starting lineup. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's what they've been using. So it's just a matter of like if Clark is purely backing up Kyle Anderson, you're in trouble because you're probably getting 20 to 22 minutes. But with the rotation they ran last game where he's getting, at least 5 or 6 minutes backing up Valanciunas, that opens the door for him to get those 26 plus minutes that he really needs.
Yeah, Brandon Clark not starting, I usually like more.
Yep.
It always depends on guys, but I like having him not starting next to J-Val. Basically gets more of that run at the 5. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. And so last year it was a really big thing because he was basically the backup center a lot of the times. And so him coming off the bench, he was extremely productive. This year he hasn't been like the pure backup center. So you've been still getting him off the bench, but playing alongside Joval. So now that's another reason why I think that if they continue with the rotation they went with last game, it's going to really benefit Clark.
Awesome. And here I was concerned we wouldn't have enough time. We wouldn't have, that we would have too much time. We never have enough time is what I just learned between you and me. Yet. Yeah, we're two guys who talk a lot. So there's that. Guys, let's go through our sponsor, SuperDraft. We have exciting news about our partnership with them. They've partnered with Caesars Rewards to transform the DFS industry forever. The opportunity to make serious cash has never been better for a DFS player with low rake, high stake contests that RenPack wins all the time that are expecting huge overlays as SuperDraft rapidly grows. As a bonus, you'll earn Caesars Rewards with every contest you enter. Tonight, SuperDraft is hosting a $25,000 daily dime contest with $5,000 going to first. So make sure to get your entries in for that one, locking at 8 Eastern time. And there's overlay on those all the time. Just let it be known that if you're not going over there and trying to build your bankroll, you're just kind of doing it wrong. If you happen to be making a first deposit into SuperDraft, make sure to use the promo code Awesemo21 to get $50 free when you deposit $50 or more. You can download SuperDraft in the App Store or play at superdraft.io today. SuperDraft, no limits, more winning. Awesome. Let's get ourselves on over to game 2. We got the San Antonio Spurs. They're 4-point dogs heading to Dallas, 226 total. I found it very, very interesting. You rarely see a jump of like 6 points from opening, but this basically opened around 220. It's up to the 226 range. We've got Rudy Gay, Derek White back from the COVID list. LaMarcus Aldridge is also going to be in. They rested him on that last game right before the break. Devin Vassell continues to be out. How do we go about projecting these rotations? Because right now I've only got 2 guys over 29 minutes, and they're pretty obvious: DeMar DeRozan, DeJounte Murray. Talk to me about the top end.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at as well. This is one where we really need a starting lineup because I have no idea. DeJounte Murray, I assume, is going to start. DeMar DeRozan, I assume, is going to start. Beyond that, nothing really would surprise me. My best guess.
God knows.
What'd you say?
I said, God knows. I have absolutely no idea. Like,
yeah, I mean, my best guess based on what they had been doing before the All-Star break is Murray, Walker, DeRozan, Johnson, and Poeltl. But you could very easily get Aldridge back in over Poeltl. You could very easily get Derek White in place of Lonnie Walker. You could do any number of things. So I'm with you right now. The only people I have projected north of 28 minutes are Murray and DeRozan. I think, obviously those minute projections will be adjusting as we get an actual lineup from the Spurs, but it's a team where there's a lot to talk about, and I don't really know how much a lot of it matters. Because
it matters because one is obviously going to end up optimal tonight. Like that's just kind of how it works, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it's a pretty good matchup against Dallas too. It's just a situation where you have, we've gotten it a lot this year, where you have a team that was very shorthanded for a very long period of time. And so prices went up on the relevant players. And then now everyone's coming back at once. And so even the players like Murray and DeMar DeRozan, who by all means are still perfectly fine plays, like they're still good. They're still going to play 30 plus minutes. Most likely they still produce at a high rate, but their rates go down a little bit when you account for whatever amount of time they're going to play with LaMarcus Aldridge, whatever amount of time they're going to play with Derek White, because those are guys that are just going to have the ball in their hand or have the offense run through them a little bit more than who they're replacing. So it's just a little bit tougher for Murray and DeRozan, and the price tags are rising. When you get beyond those guys, though, I mean, Jakob Poeltl's priced for LaMarcus Aldridge to be out or to play 30 plus minutes. Aldridge isn't out, and I doubt Poeltl plays north of 30. Kelden Johnson, I think, is really interesting because he came off the bench in the 2 games that he played 2 games before the All-Star break after missing time during the COVID layoff. He played 11 minutes off the bench, and then he played 22 minutes off the bench. He's averaged about 29 minutes per game this year. If he starts, I think that's a sign that we can expect like 28 plus minutes from, or, around 28 minutes from Kelden Johnson. He's been a productive player around the fantasy point per minute. He's cheap. He's small forward eligible on FanDuel, small forward, power forward on DraftKings. So he takes up the most difficult position to fill. I think he's a really, really good play if he's in the starting lineup. If he's not in the starting lineup, I become more concerned about his minutes though.
On DraftKings, he's the number one guy in the boom bust tool, just in terms of leverage, 10.7 leverage score. So 22% ownership, 33% optimal percentage. I think I'd still be willing to take a shot. He got up to 22 minutes not in the starting lineup last time out. I could see him sneaking it to like 24, 25. If you had told me like earlier this season, he was kind of a guy everybody was jamming into lineups. It didn't really matter where that price tag. He was up to 6,400 for a while over on FanDuel. Now he's back down to 5,800. I feel like he's kind of the forgotten man at that position. And on FanDuel, where you have to play two small forwards, I feel like I'm getting to more of him as a pairing, just as a way to get different and get off of even like DeJounte Murray, DeRozan. Something I also talked a little bit on the Slate Starter article about yesterday was like, I try not to on a 2-game slate go too crazy with groups or with limiting players from a team. I put a hard cap on 2 from the Spurs. I don't see any way that unless this game goes to double overtime, that you would end up at these current prices having 2 or 3. Like it'd be tough to see 2. So I'm still getting to a couple of pairings of those, but I definitely don't want 3 Spurs in the same lineup. Would you agree with that?
Mostly. So I do think the one spot where it could go awry is like 5K Derek White, 5,100 Kelden Johnson, and then one of Murray DeRozan. Like that could very easily work where DeRozan has a good game and then Derek White has a better game than the other 5K players, and so does Kelden Johnson. So like that's, I guess, the one way you could see it happening. Or, you know, you can also use Patty Mills, you can use Rudy Gay. 2 cheap guys and an expensive guy I think could work. But I think it's unlikely that it's like DeJounte Murray plus DeMar DeRozan plus anyone.
So Derek White, how many minutes do you have him in for right now?
24. And that's another one where I think I could be wrong by 5 minutes in either direction.
Yeah, I have no gauge for where this is. We haven't seen him play since Valentine's Day. So I'm right now trying to lowball him a little bit because otherwise I'm getting him in way too many lineups over on DraftKings. FanDuel, I'm less concerned. You just kind of have to play 2 guys over on in every position. So if I get to a little bit more over there, I'm fine with it. Talk to me a little bit about some of these other middling Spurs options. Because again, this is kind of a tough team to get a gauge on what we need to do.
Yeah. And so, I mean, White also, if he comes off the bench, you know, I think that his rates should go up a little bit, but again, it would be a little bit worse sign for his minutes. If he were to place Lonnie Walker in the starting lineup, I think he gets a couple more minutes, but the rates go down a little bit because he's playing with Murray and with DeRozan. Patty Mills, I expect to play a few less minutes than he has been now that White is back. I still think he's a viable option on FanDuel. Some of my top builds were just double punting shooting guard there and going Mills and Bane. I definitely prefer getting one of those spots to Dylan Brooks if I can, but I think that double punt is a decent strategy on FanDuel. 4,500 on DraftKings is, I think, a lot more difficult to get to. 4,700 for Rudy Gay. Like Josh asked me this morning, who's the one guy that we're just kind of not talking about that ends up winning the slate. And like Rudy Gay's that type of guy, but I also just, there's no reason for me to think he's playing more than 20 or 22 minutes tonight. You know, if he does, so be it. And if he does, he's probably gonna have a big game. It's just really, really hard to think that that's anywhere close to like the most likely thing to happen.
Don't put that out into the world. 5,200 Rudy Gay over on FanDuel. What's his price over on DK right now? 4,700. I could maybe see having a couple shots on that just randomly, but good Lord, if he ends up winning the slate on FanDuel, I will be a sad, sad person. Anything else that you really want to touch base on here? Talk about Podol, who really is the only other center option that exists on planet Earth on FanDuel.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing is, you know, again, pay attention to the starting lineup. If LaMarcus Aldridge starts, you're probably getting 26, 28 minutes from him. Just no real way to gauge what his conditioning level is, what they want to do with him. Him starting would just, again, kind of be a signal, I think, that he's more likely than not to get enough minutes to be a good option here. And obviously, if he starts, you would take minutes away from Pirtle.
Yeah, I'm just go J-Val. Good Lord. Yeah. Here it goes. Ankle injury incoming. I don't even want to say that. That's just... I'm gonna be the most affected by that. I know that. Anyway, guys, make sure you follow us on Twitter. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Again, the subscribe button goes a long way for us. And hit the notification bell. We're constantly working every single day for you guys to give you the best free information in front of the paywall here on YouTube. Just give us a little bit of a helper there. Let's also talk a little bit about Odds Shopper. So don't make a bet without shopping for the best odds first. Betting lines change by minute and can vary greatly depending on which book you're using. That's why it's important that you use Awesemo's Odds Shopper to find the best line available on the game you're betting, and that helps you get the edge that you need to beat the house. Head on over to oddshopper.awesemo.com, where we compile the best bets available for every game, updated in real time. Sign up for free to track your bets and receive alerts when the lines move. And as I also alluded to a few times in previous shows, the win percentage and ROI tool have been added directly to the homepage based on Alex Baker's projections. He's pretty good at this stuff, so take a look. I would definitely take a look over there. So over 6.5 rebounds for Murray. 78% to win, good for 38.4% ROI over there. A couple of the other bets, he had the under on 24.5 for Ja Morant, 23.5 for Russell Westbrook, all kind of things that you're able to look at his projections directly on the Odds Shopper screen. So give that a look and take advantage, because I don't know how long that'll be in front of the paywall, but while it is, make sure that you're accumulating those dollars. Let's get over to let's get on over to the Dallas side of the ball, where we have one Luka Doncic kind of sitting above and away, the highest projected guy on this slate. Do you have any pushback on going overweight here? How much is too much? And then also, it's kind of interesting, and you should note that it's small forward now over on FanDuel. Does that help gauge your interest in any way, shape, or form, considering we don't have to compete with Russell Westbrook in the same lineups?
Yeah, I think it makes them a hell of a lot easier to get in the lineups on FanDuel. The position's so difficult to fill out, and then now you get Luka there, which is really great. On DraftKings, it becomes the math just becomes more difficult, because without even getting into all the other guards that we've talked about, you have Luka, you have Westbrook, you have Beal, you have Morant, and then you have all these other guards. None of those guys are forward eligible. Some of them, I guess Beal is shooting guard eligible, I think, but other than that, you can only roster 3 or 4, at most. So him being a guard there just naturally is going to make it more difficult to get him into lineups, but still should be a priority. Still, I think by anyone with a brain probably has him projected as the top scorer on the slate. I don't actually have our projections in front of me, so I'm hoping that Alex has him as
Depends on the day. Yeah. I have a brain sometimes, but Luka Doncic is the guy that I feel like it's so easy for me to just click that button every single time.
Yeah. So, he's clearly the top projected guy. He's got a better chance than anyone else of scoring the most points on the slate. He's also the most expensive, but the gap between him and Westbrook isn't that high as far as salary goes. And so I do think that with ownership being similar, if you can get to Doncic, I would give the slight edge to him. Westbrook is about a 1.45 to 1.5 fantasy point per minute guy. Doncic in the games that he's played with Porzingis this year is at 1.67. So you do have a gap there, and that gap is big enough that it's not likely to be made up for just by the matchup against Memphis, especially because, it's not like Dallas is playing Utah or something like that. So
right.
I think that Doncic is the preferred option. I wouldn't be destroying the rest of my lineup to make sure that I can get from Westbrook to Luka. But if you can do it, without ruining too much other stuff, I think that it's the way to go.
Yeah, and they're all sitting right around the same optimal percentage. They're all between 46 and 48% showing up in the optimal. But for me, that kind of asserts the fact that I might want to take the guy who can project for more raw points if I'm getting him at around the same ownership. Does that make sense?
What was that? Sorry.
So like Luka Doncic in general, he's just projecting out exponentially better in a lot of different ways for me. And obviously you're kind of splitting straws. They're all different positions on FanDuel, which I think was kind of the point that they were trying to make. I kind of find it ironic because I think they were trying to make the slate more enjoyable by not stacking all the point guards, having Doncic and Westbrook, because a majority of the ownership would be soaked up there, and they moved them to small forward. But I really think that it makes it easier to get to both of them.
Yeah, it definitely does, because you can just punt. FanDuel pricing today, it's not even that it's bad, but there's just there's no mid-range really. It's every position you can either double punt or you can pay up for one spot and pay down for another one. And so it makes it really easy to get, I think at least 2 out of 3 of Westbrook, Beal, Doncic, but Beal's so expensive too. Shooting guard actually gives you some decent cheap options with Brooks and with Bane, as a point per dollar guy. So I think that, as far as Westbrook and Luka go on FanDuel, any sort of optimal build, I think is going to have both of them.
We've got a super chat here from Gene B. Kim, my guy, Thanks so much for stopping on by. He said on a 2-game slate like this with GPPs of 200K plus players, again, more people in this pool for a 2-gamer than you would generally have on a 10-gamer. Gotta love DFS. Is the idea of playing less than 49K and over 59K lineups on DK and FanDuel respectively worth exploring? So playing, I believe he means between the 49K and 59K price range on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, I think I never really set minimum salaries anyway. It just so works out that because of the projections and other things I do with my lineups, I end up getting within a few hundred points of max. Anytime you have fewer games and you're playing in massive field tournaments, the rules kind of go out the window. Like you and I were talking earlier about two Washington centers. I don't think it's a good idea. I also don't think anybody's really going to do it. So, to an extent,
maybe do it.
Yeah. To an extent, anything stupid that you're thinking about doing makes you more likely to take down 250K if it happens to somehow work. So, I mean, from that extent or from like that perspective, I think it's fine. But you also still have to balance that against you're not trying to just not cash your lineups ever. You go broke pretty quickly if you're not, like the whole the adage about getting first or last in DPPs. You actually lose all your money really quickly if you actually like play with that strategy. So it's a balancing act. Like I definitely, on a slate like this where there are a pretty healthy amount of really cheap guys and then a healthy amount of very questionable mid-range guys, I think it's okay. You basically just have to look at it and say, like, is it realistic that I don't have a good example off the top of my head. This 4K guy is going to just outscore this 5K
an 8K guy, or something like that. Even larger gap.
Right. And so I mean you can definitely just do more crazy stuff on a slate like this, but you just kind of have to balance it and make sure you're not, just lighting money on fire, basically.
And understanding what your goal is too, because I think if you zero out your salary at any point in time in this, there's a pretty good chance it's going to be duped. Especially on FanDuel, where you're basically kind of locked into certain plays to get to zero. You're probably going to be spending up to the top range of things. You got to be thinking that you're going to be duplicating with at least 2 or 3 of those studs in your lineup.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, like using the boom bust tool can be useful for this because it gives you, chances of quote unquote success at their salaries. You can kind of, you can do the math, you can figure out their chances of success. Like, if this player were so if you're saying like, a 5,500 guy and a 4K guy, you can basically say, okay, if this guy were 5,500, what would his chances of success be? Compare it to the guy that is 5,500 and then figure out if, the ownership and the math makes sense, if it's worth being contrarian there.
I love it. Yeah, I think you actually had the 2-game article or the 3-game article where we were talking about short slates. I'll try to find that and see if I can't put that up on Twitter afterwards. But you had a great breakdown of ways to get contrarian on these smaller slates. But yeah, leaving salary on the table, definitely a plus, definitely something, as you said, like it can be more positive EV to be borderline stupid than to like actually be like making a solid lineup.
Yeah, there's a difference between playing a $48,000 DraftKings lineup that has, I don't know, Davis Bertans over Kyle Anderson. Mm-hmm. That's different than playing a 48K lineup that has Derek White over John Morant.
Right. You're giving up so much there.
Right.
Like it's outrageous. Not saying that it can't be done because we're going to see something, I'm sure, that takes it down. It's going to be either a zeroed out salary or it's going to be something with like 3K on the table. I just feel it. I feel it. I don't know how, but one of the ways that might happen is with some of these other Dallas pieces. Obviously, we can talk about Josh Richardson. We can talk about, Dorian Finney-Smith, who I don't really think exists. This is a fully healthy Dallas team, which makes this very, very difficult for me to want to take shots on some of these other pieces. Does anybody intrigue you in this mid range? And then we'll move on to the center position to round it out.
Yeah, I mean, not too much. I don't think we touched on Porzingis, but he obviously, if you can get to him, is a good
He's
option.
really good at basketball. You should play him.
Yeah, I think he's going to be more useful on FanDuel than DraftKings since you are forced into 2 power forwards. And the position's really weak. The pricing on most guys is kind of crazy. Like Brandon Clark's expensive. So I think that Porzingis looks really good on FanDuel. Jalen Brunson, I think, also looks pretty good. Him and Josh Richardson both Richardson at small forward, which is a weak position at 5,400. Brunson at point guard at 5,400 on FanDuel. I think that, there's risk in Richardson because he's not a very good fantasy producer, and in Brunson because he's coming off the bench and, his minutes certainly could disappear at some point, but typically you're getting 26 to 27 minutes from Brunson. He's around a 0.9 to 0.95 fantasy point per minute guy, and paying down for him on FanDuel does help you get those expensive pieces into your lineup. Tim Hardaway Jr. kind of is similar to Brunson, where he's getting similar playing time off the bench. He's more scoring dependent, so the floor is a little bit lower. He doesn't produce at as quite high a clip, but he's fine as well. I think from getting guys in the lineups, I would say it's Brunson and then Richardson and then Hardaway for me on FanDuel, amongst the non-Luka or Porzingis guys.
Love it. I'm trying to think about anybody else that you would possibly be wanting to roster. Any of these centers between okay. Who is?
Maxi Kleber.
Okay.
He's 4,300 on DraftKings. He's 5K on FanDuel. I wish he was 4,300 on FanDuel because that would fit a lot of stuff that I've tried to do.
Right.
He's probably going to play around 28 minutes. He's going to produce like 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute. He's kind of just going to be there. It's sort of similar to Davis Bertans, except I think there's a little bit higher chance that Davis Bertans just like torches the slate and you have to have him.
And 25% Maxi Kleber. I like playing him when he's like 4%, and I absolutely need the punt, and he's like under 4K. Like those are kind of my qualifications for going to, but obviously on a 2-game slate, you're very, very limited in what you should or should not be doing because you have to kind of do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, rounding it out, is there anything that you really want to touch on just in terms of like how this slate sets up? Is there anybody else that you really kind of like that we didn't highlight or spotlight that you want to talk about?
I mean, we talked about it at length, but we did get the Washington lineup.
Okay.
Mo Wagner is starting.
So, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's the same lineup that we've been getting with Westbrook, Beal, Matthews, Rui, and Wagner. It does just make... It's not even that it makes Wagner more consistent. It doesn't make his minutes more consistent, but we do at least know that he's getting the opportunity to go up against Joe Val. If he plays well, he can get more minutes. I think the biggest thing for me is I was building cash lineups before the show. Knowing he's starting, it makes me feel a little bit better if I land on him, especially on FanDuel at 4K. Then you're kind of just hoping for the best. But, if he were coming off the bench, I'd be a lot more nervous about it.
You're not giving up anything else at the position. I mean, it's Porzingis and X. And so you might as well play the cheapest available guy who's actually starting.
Right. Like when I was running through my lineups, it was like, okay, do I overpay for Brandon Clark and have to play Patty Mills over Dillon Brooks? Or do I just like bite the bullet and play Mo Wagner?
You said Patty Mills and I just lost you. Like that was kind of the end of that discussion. I think that was probably the end of your own discussion. Oh God. Yeah. I'm pretty sure for the most part, like DeMar DeRozan, DeJounte Murray from the Spurs, kind of really the only two pieces that I'm going to get to a bunch of. Kelden Johnson, again, we'll wait on that lineup. We'll see kind of how that pans out. But anything else from this game in particular? Obviously, there's no interest I have in Powell or WCS or any of these other dudes at center. I will have probably none.
Yeah, I mean, assuming those guys don't start, like if Powell cracks the starting lineup, like Josh had some crazy take this morning about Dwight Powell.
What did he say?
Cracks the starting lineup, then by all means go ahead and play Powell. But
yeah, totally. I mean, he's under contract. That makes sense.
Right. Yeah. So, outside of that, though, I don't really have anything there. I am planning to just, go ahead and if we don't have the Spurs starting lineup, I'm okay with plugging in Keldon Johnson and then reevaluating if I have to. I think that I'll be able to move pieces around enough. And if I do end up just getting stuck with Keldon Johnson off the bench, like you said, he'll probably still play 24, 25 minutes. He'll probably have a higher usage rate too. So it's not the end of the world.
I feel this news coming between 8 and 8:30. And even on a 2-gamer, God forbid we get something straightforward and easy, right?
It's going to be that Trey Lyles is still starting because my assumption is that Lyles either doesn't play or plays like 6 minutes. Like when I mapped everything out, it was like, okay, this guy could start or this guy could start. But it basically all ended with Trey Lyles is leaving the rotation again. So my assumption is that Trey Lyles will start and I'll have to just like rebuild everything.
Love it. Guys, we got upcoming shows. Obviously, we got right after us Live Before Lock with Josh Engleman and Greg Ehrenberg. We've got the golf guys, Jason Roslin and Ben Rasa, breaking down the players. Again, this is like probably my favorite golf tournament other than the Masters to watch all year. It's known as the 5th major. There's some diabolical holes out there. Pete Dye is a crazy, crazy human being. As a golfer myself, I've never necessarily enjoyed his stuff other than I believe he did Whistling Straits as well. But TPC Sawgrass is just legendary. It's an incredible golf course, makes for a fun sweat. So check out some of those massive contests and check into their golf content for tomorrow. On the way out, follow us on Twitter, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, hit the notification bell. That is going to do it for us. I'm Eric. He's Adam. Guys, catch you later.
See you guys.
Hello. This feels weird. It's been a while.
I know. I really enjoyed not doing live before locks. It has nothing to do with you though. I cooked dinner for like 4 straight days at my house. It was a good time.
I have not eaten all day.
I had very little so far today. But I've got leftover ribs to jam down my throat when we're done, so that's going to be good. Oh, God. And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Wednesday, March 10th. 2-game slate in front of us, so we have plenty of time. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg. We are brought to you by SuperDraft, and we will touch on SuperDraft in a little bit, but we will start here. Greg, how are you?
It's been a while since I've talked to another human being. My only human interactions have been texting Rinpack about best ball drafts as of late. And that's all I've done for the last couple of days. DraftKings had their best ball drafts. They overlaid it feel less than halfway their $20 tournament. And there is no way to, like CSV upload anything. So I did my 150 drafts by hand. That is all I've done the last few days. And I haven't eaten it all day. I haven't slept. I did get my second COVID shot yesterday, and people asking about side effects. Like, I don't know. I just did a bunch of best ball drafts. I don't know if that's a symptom. I don't know if that's a side effect, but that's all I've done.
Yeah, I didn't do nearly enough of those. Certainly wanted to. Wish I would have really buckled down given the overlay. That's basically a ton of free money that I just decided to skip out on. So I hate myself for it. And I'm going for my first COVID shot tomorrow. So exciting stuff.
Yeah, it was pretty easy for me. I had no side effects on either of them. Nobody in my family did. Some of my friends had mild ones, but yeah, I got lucky.
My parents have both, they've gotten both at this point in time, and they haven't told me anything about it being ultra negative. So I assume that they have been fully good to go otherwise. My wife's arm was sore, but I don't have her DNA. So I'm hoping that I just have tougher arms than she does.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, look, you got those strong arms from building DFS lineups.
Yeah. My index finger, incredible. Index finger and left bicep. That's neither here nor there. Let's talk a little bit about this slate. Look, we've got all day to talk about it. We could probably talk about every individual play if we really wanted to and have a ton of time to do it. But let's start just simply on the guard side. Or, you know what? Let's start here. Is there anybody you see on either FanDuel or DraftKings as a no-brainer play today? Guys just, close to lock button?
No. And this is a terrible slate, by the way. So one of the other reasons I was desperate to fill time with stuff that isn't as important, obviously, is NBA DFS at the top of the show, is because this is maybe my least favorite slate of the year. And I feel like I'm just kind of forced to get action on it because we haven't had DFS in so long. This slate stinks. I don't like the matchups. There's no good value. There's no plays. Like Luka's a good pay up option, but there's no salary to save to get to him in a way that's comfortable. So this slate stinks. There's nobody anywhere close to a lock play for me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's a tricky spot. Now I have guys that are pretty aggressive in my exposures, but it's not that I'm super comfortable about it. There's just like 25 guys on this slate that are all basically the exact same play at, varying salaries around $2,000 either direction. It's tricky, man. It's really tricky.
Yeah, and the reason is really because of the All-Star break, right? Because we've had so much time off to where basically every slate this year, we could count on guys getting ruled out. There's going to be guys injured. There's going to be something that happens, but not today because teams have not played for a week. So everybody's healthy. It's normal rotation. So there's nothing like that going on. It's just basically everybody's a fair price on both sides.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's dive into it right now then. And let's start at the guard spot. FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever direction you want to go, we can go. Who stands out to you as the best guard? And if it's site dependent, give me both of them.
So it's actually the same for me on both FanDuel and DraftKings, and that's Russell Westbrook. So I would like it to be Luka Doncic. It's just not that easy to get up to him on both sites, given the lack of value on the slate. That doesn't mean I don't have him in my builds, but I do find the salary savings that Westbrook offers versus Luka make a pretty big difference. The other thing too is, we look at what we look at what Westbrook has done over the last handful of games. He scored over 50 DraftKings points in 9 of his last 10 games. He's been really consistent, and I think the time off from the All-Star break is only going to help him. I think he wasn't healthy at the start of the year. I think that caused a lot of people, myself included, to just assume Westbrook is washed. He's not a good fantasy player. He's not a good real life player anymore. And it's not to say that he's some MVP caliber player, but he's playing at a very high level over the last month. And that's one of the reasons the Wizards are kind of fighting to get back in the playoff picture. It's because Westbrook is, once again, a very solid, at least NBA starter, and he's capable of being a difference maker. And it's showing up in his fantasy stats. So Westbrook is a core guy for me just because of the salary savings he offers compared to Luka.
Well, on FanDuel, it should be no surprise, I have a ton of Westbrook. He is my most exposed point guard. Pretty easy to do. I have 3 guys pretty aggressively, and I guess we will get to them in a little bit. Any other guys that you're looking at point guard that seem fantastic to you? Or do you see anybody that's in our ownership that you're like, that guy seems a bit overowned?
Just one thing. Why did FanDuel switch Luka to a small forward all of a sudden?
I have no idea. I'm not mad about it.
Because that was one thing I was kind of thinking. I was like, how do I talk about Luka here when he's a point guard on DraftKings, small forward on FanDuel? No overlap in his position at all. Even DraftKings, they have multiple positional eligibility. He's only point guard there and only small forward on FanDuel, obviously. But that's something that stands out, not in terms of anything that matters in terms of ownership, but just something I looked at as like, that's odd. And when I started making lineups, I was like, what's with Luka at point? Because I was looking at my point guard exposure. I was like, how come Luka's not coming up on FanDuel at all? And then I was like, oh, because he's not a point guard all of a sudden.
I mean, I don't think that he should have ever been a point guard. I think that he should be a small forward. So I'm happy with where he is. I guess I would guess that is a very minority opinion in our chat, but he is not a point guard. To me, he is a small forward. 62% of his minutes on cleaning the glass at small forward this year. 32% at shooting guard.
So one
positions don't matter anyway. It's real.
They just go out there and play basketball. It's not really all that important. What do you make of the minutes for the Spurs guys? I think it's so tricky because we've had these guys. I don't even remember the last time we had a full Spurs team. It's been probably over a month. It might not have even happened at all this season, actually. But now all of a sudden we've had LaMarcus Aldridge come off the bench, play limited minutes last few games. He was also dealing with sickness. He had I think it was a stomach bug, if I remember correctly. But he came off the bench, played 11 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts and plays full minutes today. I wouldn't be shocked if he sticks in that bench role. I don't know what that does to Jakob Poeltl. I don't know Derek White being back in the mix for Rudy Gay. I don't know what that does to guys like DeJounte Murray or DeMar DeRozan. So Derek White is somebody who is 5,000 on DraftKings. I think that's a very favorable price tag. On FanDuel is a little more expensive at 5,600. If I had any confidence in his minutes, I would think of him as one of the strongest plays on DraftKings, just because of the potential minutes upside. I think he's going a little bit overlooked with ownership in the teens.
I have absolutely no idea what to make of this San Antonio team. Just a mess of dudes in the 19 to 28 minute range. So DeJounte Murray, DeMar DeRozan, I think that unequivocally, these guys are the 2 guys that we should expect to have the most minutes for the Spurs. Any disagreement there?
No. And okay. I don't have another player on the team projected for over 30 minutes.
Neither do I. My 3rd highest number for minutes is Kelden Johnson at 28.
Okay. I have him for 29.
Okay, perfect. That makes you feel better. The look on your face when I said 28 made me think that you were about to say 26, and I was really not happy about that either. Okay. My next highest is Jakob Poeltl at 26.
Okay.
Derek White at 25, which I could be talked. That can go many different directions. You could take 5 off of that, and I'd be like, "Yep, totally cool."
Yeah, I think the range of I gave him 26. I think the range of outcomes for Derek White is like 24 to 32 minutes.
Yeah, 20 feels real to me.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the best players on the team, so I think he just kind of has to play himself into more minutes. I'm kind of surprised at the ownership on, well, it's come down a little bit, but I was going to say Lonnie Walker was picking up like 15% ownership on both sites earlier. And to me, that was way too high for a guy that I think is going to get really pinched with all these guys coming back. So he's the guy I have the least interest in. He's also pretty expensive on both sites.
Yeah, I was very happy to see that he was 5,400. I gave him 22 minutes. That's another one where I don't really have Lonnie Walker, Rudy Gay, Trey Lyles. You can randomize their minutes as far as I'm concerned, and I don't really know which direction they're going to pop out. I hate it a lot. The guy that we need to talk about, in my opinion, is Patty Mills at 4K, 4,500 on DraftKings. We're throwing the script out for the show. Now we're just talking Spurs. It doesn't matter. Who cares about guards? I gave Patty Mills 23 minutes. I'm curious where you are.
Patty Mills, 22 minutes.
Okay. So we're sort of in the same page there. He's a guy that I don't want to get to because he's picking up some ownership on FanDuel. It's a lot easier for me to get away from him on DraftKings. The real question to me is just simply like, I don't see him having minutes upside now that everybody is back. I think that he is just a guy that's going to play 20 to 24 minutes, depending on how the game's going. And I don't like, the only way that I feel like I could really miss on Patty Mills is if he has an outlier day on the floor. I don't think it'll be because of minutes.
Yeah, I agree with that totally, especially with Derek White back. And I don't expect that to be much of an issue. The other thing too is there's somebody, at least because on FanDuel, if you're looking at a cheap shooting guard and you're saying, if I don't like Patty Mills, there has to be somebody else to like instead. I'd much rather roster Desmond Bane for a cheaper price, about the same ownership. And Desmond Bane is starting tonight. So I feel a little bit better about him. I think that he kind of has to be talked in the same sentence as Patty Mills.
Speaking of the Spurs, LaMarcus Aldridge is out tonight.
Oh, well. Word.
And by the way, I have an unfortunate amount of Desmond Bane on FanDuel right now at the flat minimum, and it's causing me to have heartburn. It's not something I want. I just don't know what to do with that information. But let's just take the time, because we have all of it, to walk through what we think this means for San Antonio. I assumed he was playing, so this is shocking. I don't want to say shocking because that would be kind of weird, but I didn't think this was happening. So what are the trickle-down effects? I think we now have a legitimate second center on FanDuel as opposed to just having only one that I thought was like an actual option today. How do you feel about Jake Puddle's minutes?
One second. I'm just trying to figure out. LaMarcus Aldridge is not with the team. That is so bizarre. It's not not even listed with an injury. He's just not with the team.
Coach Pop says the Spurs are looking for other opportunities elsewhere for Aldridge. He is healthy. Both sides mutually agreed. So he's getting the Blake Griffin.
Yeah, the Blake Griffin, the Andre Drummond. Although I kind of feel like Aldridge is a little bit left than those guys, but not a ton left.
In 2021?
Look at the other guys I just brought up, though. I said he's a little bit more left than Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond.
Well, I think Drummond will actually help people. That's a completely different story. I think being on the Pistons and the Cavs is probably not great for making you look like you could be anything other than garbage.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen that with guys, like Nick Batum. Like, he looked all kinds of finished like, for multiple years, and then he goes to the Clippers like, oh, Batum is good still.
I don't know who could possibly want LaMarcus Aldridge. I don't know what he brings to a team.
So you brought up Poeltl. Poeltl now becomes one of the best plays on the slate.
Yeah, so he's going to play, 31, 32 minutes, something in that neighborhood?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a bunch of games with him. I mean, they haven't had Aldridge healthy for a little while, and it's basically going to depend on foul trouble for Poeltl. But you look at his recent games without Aldridge, he's played as many as 36 minutes. And the only limiting factor for him in some of those games has been foul trouble. If we go back to the last just bring up a handful of games from him. Not that I would project him for that many minutes, but he has the upside for it.
Last 30 days in the games that Aldridge didn't play, he averaged 28 minutes. Just throwing that out there. Keep going.
But some of those games were foul issues.
Yeah. I just mean like 28 is to me like an absolute floor for tonight either way. Like I'm still giving him more minutes even in the worst possible case scenario from where I was before. So what do you got here?
I was just going to say I think Pirtle's one of the best plays on the slate. I don't even remember what else I had to add to that. But yeah, still Pirtle really good. I guess this helps Rudy Gay a little bit. Trey Lyles as a punt play is viable, not one that I feel super good about, but I think that he's in the mix now just because there's so few value options to consider on the slate. That's the reason to if you get, 16, 17 fantasy points out of Trey Lyles, that can make a huge difference on the slate. And his viability in the optimal lineup probably has less to do with him individually and has more to do with how well Luka and Russell Westbrook play.
Guys, 2,300 people in here, 376 likes. Apparently everybody before us was not doing their job. So go ahead and hit that thumbs up. We need to run that number up a little bit higher. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. Subscribe to our podcast feed. You can do that wherever you get your podcast. But basically every show that we put out that isn't a live before lock show ends up on that feed. And you can subscribe to individual sports if you want to. So go check that all out right now. Do you think that Jakob Poeltl and Drew Eubanks split the center minutes? Or do you see Rudy Gay / Trey Lyles picking up a couple?
Because the matchup is against Dallas, I don't think we really see much of Eubanks. Like there isn't a need to play. There isn't a need to play bigger lineups here. I think they're going to go to Trey Lyles. I think we'll see Rudy Gay play at center. The other thing too is don't forget some of the games where we saw guys like, not that Samanic matters, but guys like Samanic or Drew Eubanks in the lineup. Those are games that Rudy Gay didn't play.
Yeah, so I'm looking back pre-COVID, early September, games without Aldridge, but he was like Lyles was gone for a game. Lonnie Walker was gone for a game. We did see Drew Eubanks see a little bit of time on the floor. I am going to give him like 10 minutes. I think that the rest of those minutes can then be split out between Rudy Gay and Trey Lyles. So what are you expecting from Lyles then for this game from a minutes perspective? I just landed on 16, and I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I gave him 20.
Okay.
And that makes him part of the reason also I want to pinch Eubanks from the rotation, at least in terms of giving minutes, is because I want some of those cheaper Spurs guys to look more viable. And like Eubanks isn't going to be somebody that I consider, but I do want to actually get to Trey Lyles.
What was your bump to Rudy Gay?
Rudy Gay, I just give a couple extra minutes. So I have him at 22.
Okay. I'm having some trouble finding minutes now.
Yeah, so what really makes it hard though is, looking back through some of these games, there are so few games where the Spurs have had like certain combinations of players healthy. There's always this guy's out, that guy's out. They dealt with COVID for a while, and then they've had so many different injuries too. So it's a goof. Like there's no precedent to look back and say this is what this team does in this situation.
This is the worst. It's truly the worst. Trey Lyles is going to trip me up here. I'm actually happy with 10 for Eubanks. Oh God, I need to find one. I'm going to go 9 to Eubanks, 20 to Rudy Gay, and 16 to Trey Lyles. I feel pretty good about that. And then Jakob Poeltl is going to get into foul trouble almost immediately and throw all of this stuff in the garbage.
That wouldn't be the first time he did that as chalk.
No,
do you remember
not at all.
There was a slate, I don't, it was either last year or 2 years ago, where he was the flat min. He was starting and he ended up, it actually happened twice. One time he fouled out in like 8 minutes. And then there was another game where he got hurt like 30 seconds into the game and didn't return.
I'm pretty, this is going to happen if I get to him, but I'm still expecting to get I'm actually happy that this happened because I'm still expecting to get like 80+% of Joe Val. So I don't think I care all that much.
So you don't want to get to Poeltl that much then?
I don't think so.
Let me see I'm curious to see what the ownership is going to be.
I still have Joe Val like 6 full points ahead of Poeltl. And at $500 more expensive. Like that to me, I still want to get aggressively over on Joe Val. And I think that this actually helps my ability to do that in that I expected Joval's ownership to go up as we got closer to lock because 40 something seemed oddly low to me. And now I think that can actually hold because there's another viable option.
So my FanDuel builds coming into the show was 70% Valanciunas and 13% Pirtle. Okay. And that's now going to be a little bit lighter on Valanciunas, a little heavier on Pirtle. But I mean, Pirtle was picking up ownership before, like at a higher clip than he should have at 22%. So I'm now just looking at what the owner, and we don't have an updated ownership yet, but I assume that I'm going to remain overweight to Valanciunas and underweight to Pirtle. Even though I'm going to get to more of Pirtle, I assume his ownership's going to go up, and that's probably going to offset it a little bit now that I'm starting to look at these numbers.
I had 90+% of Joval before we started this show.
Okay. So yeah, that is a lot of, I mean, there aren't that many centers to like on FanDuel. There's Valanciunas, there's Pirtle, and then I said some other guys mixed in, but
what really set me apart, and I know Adam touched on it in the deeper dive, but it's what we did on the strategy show this morning. We locked Westbrook, we locked Beal, and we locked Luka Doncic because I assumed that I was just going to get a pay down center at that point, whoever that would have ended up being. Joval was still the optimal center after locking those three guys. So to me, that just showed me how much utility he had over the top of everybody else at that position. And once I saw that, I was like, okay, barring Joval getting hurt, he should be able to like slide his way into a pretty easy double-double against the Wizards, at which point I'm just going to want it. Now, Pirtle scares me a little bit. Like I think the more likely scenario is that I end up like 80-20 or something.
You know, I thought there was a chance like 10 minutes ago that Aldridge was going to start and Pirtle was going to come off the bench. Like I thought that was in play as a possibility. And now it's like, no, Aldridge isn't even going to play at all.
Yeah. He's never going to play for the Spurs again. No. That's how bad that thought was.
Nah, pretty stoked about my DeRozan best ball exposure though, because DeRozan's been, that's something else we should talk about with no Aldridge. DeRozan, I'm going to bring up the numbers just so I have it in front of me, but off the top of my head, his rates have gone up massively without Aldridge off the court. Even with Aldridge not being good this year, DeRozan has still gotten a really big bump without him on the court.
Yeah, I think that's something we should probably take a little bit of a spin through just to see if there's any other guys that take a big bump. Again, we have 40 minutes to go until lock. This slate has been talked about ad nauseum already. Oh God, I really wish I didn't see everything that just popped up on my screen. That was just sad. Top Shot price alerts that I should have deleted after I sold things that are significantly higher than what I sold them at.
For shame.
Oh my God. Like double what I sold them at. I gotta disable these things while I'm talking too. All right, so let's take LaMarcus Aldridge off the floor here for the Spurs.
I have the numbers in front of me now.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so the usage bump, not that it matters for Trey Jones, he's the biggest one, but here, DeMar DeRozan, a 2% usage increase per 36 minutes on DraftKings. That ends up with him scoring 3.4 more DraftKings points. So for the year, DeMar DeRozan scores per 36 minutes, 44.22 DraftKings points per 36 minutes without Aldridge on the court. DeJounte Murray scores 41.71 DraftKings points per 36 minutes without Aldridge on the court. So both Murray, really minor boost for him because he's just a good fantasy producer in general. But I mean, the numbers are still, it's a crazy bump for DeRozan. He gets a pretty sizable usage increase.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by what that's going to do to anything that I have of DeMar DeRozan at this point. I'm trying to run all this data now.
You're not going to like this, but Patty Mills gets some rate increases as well.
I thought you were going to say that he was like starting or something, or Pop said that he's going to play 35 minutes today. I just wanted no part of it. Okay, so Murray, I think, can take a little bit of a bump. DeMar can go up another half rate, whatever. Man, his assist rate is just crazy. It's truly crazy. I don't like any part of what's about to happen.
No, and then it's going to be some Popovich nonsense where it's like, oh no, this is actually like Samanic is going to be the first guy to check in off the bench.
I don't even think he plays.
No, neither do I. But I'm saying I don't think he plays. But this is the situation. Like first game back from an All-Star break, there's only 2 games, and like people end up like Trey Lyles ends up being mildly popular, and then it's just like, nope, Samanic is who Popovich is playing. Not saying that's what I think is going to happen, but I think something dumb is going to happen.
I think that you're probably safely correct there. All right. I'm going to go ahead and call that, and I'm going to start running my crunch again. So let's sum it up. What are your expectations now that LaMarcus Aldridge is no longer with the Spurs? How is that changing what you were doing to the Spurs?
All right. So the important things here: DeRozan gets a sizable bump, small bump for DeJounte Murray, more minutes for Pirtle. I'm still going to be underweight to him. It looks like just because I think that Jonas Valanciunas is still the better center option, but Pirtle does become more of a viable play. And then on the cheap end, I think that Trey Lyles is now a worthy punt option.
Bingo. Love it. Love it. All right. We're going to let everybody go ahead and hit that thumbs up button once again, because I want that number to go higher. I feel like people are slacking today. We're back, but I need the momentum of being back by seeing the likes climb. You know, that's where we stand right now. God, I can't believe LaMarcus Aldridge just got ruled out for like permanent
for forever.
All right. We did get a super chat from James Kennan. He said, hey guys, it's your boy Jimmy Jams. Yeah, of course it is. Better combo: Russell Valanciunas or Luka DeRozan? Thanks.
Is it just me, or do those salaries not make sense?
I have no idea. So Luka and Westbrook are close. DeRozan and Joval are close, I think. Right?
And
I don't know what they are in DK either. So it's probably a DraftKings question.
All right. So, so if
it's a FanDuel question, it's Russell Westbrook and Joval, and it's not even close to me.
So on DraftKings now, especially because we have Trey Lyles as a viable option, I think it's a little bit easier to get to Luka. And there's only a $600 price difference between Luka and Westbrook, and that mattered a lot to me before. It matters less now. So the Luka combination.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right, I got my crunches running now. A lot of Kristaps Porzingis. Since we just talked about the Spurs, let's do this. I'm going to knock two things out right now. Schedule for the rest of today. One show and one show only. There is no late live before lock because these games lock at 8 and 8:30. PGA live before lock coming up after this, 8 o'clock or 8:05, somewhere around that time. Jason Roslin, Ben Rasa, talking a little bit about the players. I'm excited. I am locked and loaded for it already. I have some guys that I really wish that I didn't have, but that's neither here nor there. Free content today. NBA player projections, NHL ownership projections. Can't beat either of those two things. Free stuff is always great. And we got to give a shout out to SuperDraft. We're not going to be on for that extra half hour today to talk about them because there is no extra half hour. We don't have that kind of time. So we got to just talk about a little bit about SuperDraft right now. You don't have to worry about salaries on SuperDraft. This is a multiplier-based game. So instead of someone being, 8,700, you can get Luka with no multiplier. He's just a 1x guy. Or you can get Kristaps Porzingis at like 1.35 or something like that today. Tonight, SuperDraft has a big contest, $25,000 contest, $5K up top, locks at 8 o'clock. You could use the promo code AWESEMO21, AWESEMO21. You can get $50 free when you make a deposit of $50 or more. It's a really fun mechanism for a game. Keep your eyes peeled for Rinpack at the top of these contests. Dude loves himself some SuperDraft, and I think SuperDraft loves him too. You can download the app in the App Store. So go check out SuperDraft. Go to superdraft.io. That's SuperDraft. No limits, more winning. Let's talk Dallas Mavericks. So this is basically Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis as guys you feel happy to roster, and then every single other guy on this team is a gigantic question mark.
Yeah, so here's the other thing too is for a lot of the season, we didn't see the Mavericks play a full roster. They had guys injured. They started the year with Porzingis knee surgery. Then just as Porzingis came back, half the team got COVID. So then they had, who was out? It was like Richardson was out. Dorian Finney-Smith was out. Kleber was out. Willie Cauley-Stein was out. So it wasn't really until a couple weeks before the All-Star break that we finally started to see this team healthy. And what we really saw from them is that all of the production goes to Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis from a fantasy perspective. That's where everything goes to. And then the other guys, like DFS is playing sizable minutes, but he kind of sucks from a fantasy perspective. He's, a rich man's PJ Tucker from a fantasy perspective. Like I think that's the fair way to call him. He's playing over 30 minutes, but just the fantasy production is not there. He's barely scoring more than half a fantasy point per minute this year. So Dorian Finney-Smith, the minutes are there, but the production isn't. Although for this slate, the minutes kind of matter. And then Josh Richardson, Jalen Brunson, neither of them really stand out as spectacular plays for this slate either. And then every once in a while, Tim Hardaway Jr. pops up and plays a decent game. Then there's other times where he just randomly plays like 23 minutes and doesn't really do anything. So it's hard to feel good about anybody other than Luka and Porzingis. Porzingis, I think, is one of the stronger plays on FanDuel. And if you had to say to me one guy to have the most exposure to on the slate today on FanDuel, I would say it's Porzingis just because of the positional scarcity.
Yeah, I agree. He's very, very easy to just sort of lock button on FanDuel. And it's not that I feel comfortable about it, but otherwise you're trying to get two guys in the Mo Wagner, Brandon Clark, Maxi Kleber, Bertans group correct. And I would rather just assume that Kristaps Porzingis just falls into a half decent game, especially on FanDuel, where he's the type of guy that can get a couple block shots. And that's even more beneficial. Like FanDuel clearly fits him better than DraftKings.
Yeah, and the power forward options are so crappy. He might score 30, 35 fantasy points, which would be terrible for a normal slate. That might be fine for this one because I don't really think there's other power forwards to look at and be like, oh, yeah, that guy looks really good. Like Brandon Clark is 6,200 and coming in over 30% ownership at that price just because there aren't other options. I mean, the other guys we have here, Bertans is picking up ownership at 5,200. He's been miserable all season. He can't make shots. And then Kleber is popular at 5,000, which is an asinine price tag for him. So, yeah, I mean, Porzingis is, I think, the closest thing we have to a lock on FanDuel tonight.
Yeah, Bertans is just not good. So I'm sure he's going to hit 8 threes or something tonight. I mean, to be fair, I'll also have him. By the way, Blake Griffin has a quote, "I am not injured at all." Blake, you'd have been a lot better off telling people you were injured, man.
He's already got that contract. It doesn't matter at this point.
I guess. I'd be like, look, this is why I suck.
He's old. That's a fair reason to suck. To get swept by the Bucks on a bad knee, he gave everything he left in his career.
He kind of did. He's old. He's 31.
But he's old. He's old in terms of wear and tear. Like he missed his entire rookie season because of a broken kneecap. Yeah. And I mean, he was crazy athletic for a short period of time. By the way, I also think that there's a chance, not a likely one, but I think there's a small chance he has a little bit something left he could give the Nets in like 12 minutes per game or something like that. Cause he could still, he's shown the ability to shoot threes that he didn't have earlier in his career. He's also still a good playmaker. The defense is going to suck anyway. So it's not like he's making the defense worse.
He might get a few more open looks on the Nets than he did for the Pistons. Just like one or two. I mean, they're getting such open looks that, not that I don't think that Joe Harris is a good shooter, because he's obviously a fantastic shooter. I don't think he's going to be like a 53% three-point shooter for the rest of the year, but he will be on the Nets because he's just going to be wide open.
Yeah, and if Blake's able to hit like 38% of his threes as like a stretch center, I mean, that could be valuable just for making that offense more ridiculous, just getting somebody out there to play center and actually shoot.
Yep, absolutely. Anyway, 29 minutes to go until lock. Do you have any further Dallas Mavericks thoughts?
Is there anybody outside of Luka or Porzingis you actually feel strong about as a good play that you're comfortable with on this slate?
I will have more Jalen Brunson that I am happy to have on FanDuel, but he would be the first guy up for me out of any of these guys. And that's mostly just because he's the best fantasy scorer of everyone left. Like he's averaging 0.96 fantasy points per minute on FanDuel over the last 30 days. He's a 0.92 guy in my rates. Everybody else is like 0.8 or lower. So, Anthony Davis with the super chat. And I'm starting to think that this is just like the legit NBA Anthony Davis, the way he tosses money in here. Hundy spot. All I said was, let's get it. A bunch of fire emojis.
Hey,
you're the man, Anthony Davis. Thank you.
Let us know when you're going back to the court also.
Yes, I am desperately trying to get it today. Let's circle back now. We didn't really touch on anything for Memphis, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, we've got a super chat for a no house advantage question. I feel like I'm not supposed to answer that on a day like today, but since it's the super chat, we'll let it happen. Shout out to SuperDraft, by the way. Morant over 7.5 assists or Jakob Poeltl under 9.5 points.
It would have to be the Morant number, just because now that there's no Aldridge, I feel pretty confident in Pirtle.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Memphis. The floor is yours. I see 7 guys that are the same play today.
You know what's annoying about this slate is not only is it a 2-game, at least we have a little bit of value with the Aldridge news now, although it's very minimal amount, is that we've also compiled just some of my least favorite DFS teams all in one slate for the comeback. Because for Memphis, if you're looking at the rotation, just like what I said before with the Spurs, where it's like, I only expect 2 guys. This was before the Aldridge news, where I said, I only expect Murray and DeRozan to play over 30 minutes. I only expect John Morant to play over 30 minutes for Memphis, because the rest of the team, the way that I've been talking about Memphis is that they run this rotation like it's a rec league basketball team, and there's some rule that every player on your bench has to get in the game. So they run like a 12-man rotation. They just have guys at the end like, oh, Xavier Tillman, yeah, he has to get 14 minutes. Yeah, Tyus Jones, we have to give him minutes. Desmond Bane is going to start, and I still don't even know that he's a lock to play even over 20 minutes. I still think he's a good play relative to his price on FanDuel, where he's min price, and we need salary savings, and the shooting guard position is pretty weak. But it's really hard to feel confident in the minutes for anybody here. And I think the most likely scenario is that Morant plays in the neighborhood of 34, 35 minutes, and everybody else plays 28 or below. Maybe Dylan Brooks or Jonas Valanciunas crack 30, but I don't even think that's a likely scenario.
I have Brooks at 30. I have Joe Val at 28.
Yeah, I have 28 and 28.
Okay. Yeah. The Desmond Bane problem on FanDuel is rough. I'm just happy that DeAnthony Melton is 6K, so that like that doesn't even complicate matters even further. But the flat minimum for Desmond Bane has become a legitimate problem. What are you looking for out of Desmond Bane on a 2-game slate to be valid? Just like a lot of scoring from Beal and Westbrook and Luka?
Yeah, I mean, what you're really looking for is for the other shooting guards to suck, right? I don't even think we're, because I don't think it's that likely Bane is a big game himself. I'm looking for salary relief in lineups where the high price shooting guards like DeRozan and Beal do not have big games. That's really it. Is just he's a punt option. The expensive shooting guards aren't good.
Oi.
And I'll add this in. Desmond Bane at 4,000 on DraftKings is not nearly as strong of a play as he is on FanDuel.
Yeah, no, not even close. He's the one guy whose ownership or exposure when I refresh is a guy that like I have to immediately try to fix, because he's just getting jammed into literally everything. So what else do we do with this Memphis team? Brandon Clark coming off the bench, 6,200 on FanDuel, 5,200 on DraftKings. I think he's become a little bit of an issue on FanDuel. I think that price tag is a little too high. We have Brandon Clark 3, 4, 5, 6 as the 7th highest owned player on the slate on FanDuel today at 34% ownership. I'm not sure I like that with him not starting. And not that I expected him to start either, but him not starting means that his minutes floor is way lower than I think people are recognizing.
So I agree and disagree at the same time. I think the ownership looks stupid. The price looks stupid. I don't think he's going to have a good game relative to his price in all likelihood. But I don't think a single other power forward on FanDuel is either, outside of Kristaps Porzingis, which just forces me to get exposure to him. Yeah. So if and also Aldridge being out, because Aldridge was somebody who I thought made for a good pivot play, because Aldridge before he got ruled out, he was picking up, it was like 17 or 16% ownership. I forget exactly what the number is off the top of my head, but it was somewhere in the teens. And I thought like, hey, Aldridge, there's a pretty wide range of outcomes with him. I think that he makes for one of the better GPP power forward plays. I really, on both sides, I thought he was a good GPP play just because he's still somebody who's a capable fantasy producer. Not that I've talked too much about Aldridge because he's not on the slate anymore, but it relates to Brandon Clark just because I don't have other options now, especially not in that price range. At least before, Aldridge was 5,500, Brandon Clark was 62. Now we have Brandon Clark's at 62, the next most expensive guy on the high end. It's Porzingis at 83. And then if you're going down from him, it's Davis Bertans at 52. And we were just talking about it. Davis Bertans sucks. So he's in this no man's land just in terms of price point where there's nobody else to get to that's priced around him. And I don't like any of the other options as good value below him either.
Why is Drew Eubanks showing up now? Well, I don't want Drew Eubanks.
Go away, Drew Eubanks.
Oh, because Drew Eubanks is somehow not in our ownership project. Now he is. Did I not paste this? I think it would help me a little bit if I actually updated the data before I started speaking out into the ether.
Yeah,
I couldn't figure out why he wasn't showing up.
3.6% ownership on FanDuel and on DraftKings. I'll just give it to the people at this point because it's a player who doesn't really matter. And it's like I'm giving out information, but it's also not valuable information at the same time. But it's information nonetheless.
It's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, 1% ownership on DraftKings.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and hide out on that one. All right, so I'm refresh. I just got my crunch done. We've got 22 minutes to go. And I think that we can just sort of open up the floor to questions at this point because I don't have anything to add. Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet?
We didn't talk about the Wizards.
Oh my God, we didn't?
No, we didn't talk about the Wizards. We talked about every other team. We talked about LaMarcus Aldridge and the Spurs for 20 minutes, but
I remember talking about Bertans. I guess it was just him.
Yeah, we just made fun of Bertans, but like we haven't talked about. We touched on Westbrook. We haven't mentioned Beal. We haven't talked about Hachimura.
I don't think there's a ton to say about Westbrook and Beal today.
Like there isn't a ton to say about any of the players on this slate. We've got time to kill out.
That's fair. Well, I'm more interested in your thoughts on the non-Westbrook and Beal guys. There's no scenario where you're going to be like, there's no chance I'm playing Russell Westbrook today. Like we kind of know what we're getting there. Who are the guys that you want to get to in that like 25-minute range that we have no idea how to pin down?
So Robin Lopez has had a ridiculously wide range of outcomes over the last handful of games. Look at the minutes for Lopez over the last 7 games now: 26, 14, 28, 17, 25, 17, 30. He's all over the place. And there's also been some okay fantasy performances mixed in there. I think that Robin Lopez is not somebody I feel comfortable in, but I think that he's at least a viable GPP option, just given that there's such a wide range of outcome in his playing time.
I know that we're talking about the Wizards right now, and I agree. Like Robin Lopez to me is the third of 3 centers that are possible for me on FanDuel today. Did you see the ownership on FanDuel for Joval, Pirtle, Robin Lopez yet?
I'll
hit you with it. I have it here. 46 for Joval, 22 for Jakob Pirtle, 19 for Robin Lopez. I think that I can say unequivocally that Jakob Pirtle and Robin Lopez should not be close to each other in ownership.
No, that's way too high of ownership for Robin Lopez. But in the build I made before we started, and it's still going to be the case now, I only have exposure to 3 centers on FanDuel, and Robin Lopez is one of them. But it still ends up with me being underweight to the field on him.
Yeah, I'm going to be under just because I think that both of the ownerships on Joval and Jakob Pirtle are incorrect.
Definitely is on Valanciunas, but that's by default, because if we both think that Robin Lopez is wildly too highly owned on FanDuel, then it just has to mean that one of the other viable centers is going under-owned.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll circle now back to the rest of the Wizards. Break it down for me. Rui, Neto, Avdia, Bertans. I'll even say Garrison Matthews. Throw in Mo Wagner if you're interested. Who is the guy that stands out to you?
I have to bring up one more thing about Robin Lopez that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, go for it.
Robin Lopez is only 3,400 on DraftKings, yet has less ownership than he has on FanDuel.
Honestly, in a way that makes sense. I know why that happens.
I mean, yes, because of the positional eligibility, but still 3,400 for Robin Lopez. To me, that makes him a viable salary saving play. And so on DraftKings, I think the 15% is probably a little bit too low, just given the range of outcomes we've seen from recently on a slate where it's so difficult to find cheap guys to punt with.
I don't know what to do with shooting guard anymore. It feels, since we're talking about the Wizards, let's talk about the fact that I'm not getting to Bradley Beal all that much today. Yikes.
I'm not getting to him, but I'm underweight to the field on him.
Well, it looks like we're playing the same lineups. Are you underweight to the field on DeJounte Murray? Because if you are, then we're really playing the same lineups today.
On FanDuel, almost exactly even.
Okay. I'm just bumping both of those guys because I don't want to have 4% of 2 guys that I think that can actually be in actual winning lineups. So let's fix that a little bit. Of the ridiculous Wizards guys, I'm really not getting to much outside of Bertans. I guess a little bit of Rui, but I'm just mostly heavy on Westbrook.
So Bertan's another guy who, like Robin Lopez, I think is a better play on DraftKings than FanDuel because he's 4,400 on DK and also isn't picking up all that much ownership relative to the slate. On FanDuel, I don't think he's a good play, but he's also one that's impossible to take out of the player pool just because of the other options there. And if Brandon Clark has a bad game, then Davis Bertans might just fall into the optimal lineup. So I don't think Bertans is a good play on FanDuel, but he's one that's impossible to not roster. He wouldn't be my first choice for second power forward on FanDuel though.
Corey Randall wants to know, any thoughts on Justice Winslow? Sight don't matter. Ball don't lie.
Justice Winslow is not somebody that I'm getting to on FanDuel. Well, here it has to matter a little bit because he's 3,900 on DraftKings, and then on FanDuel he's 4,800. So I think that he's a viable cheap option on DraftKings, but not a good play on FanDuel. So sight does matter a little bit here. What happened?
Just like, have you seen Tillman's projected ownership on FanDuel? Like, some of this stuff is just blowing my mind.
Let's see. So the latest, I haven't gone through every single player since we got the
18.
How many minutes did you give him? I do not have him playing very much.
15?
I think I have him for 14.
Yeah, not enough that I want to 18% of Tillman. So I'm sure he's in the optimal lineup now.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got him scoring like 12 and a half fantasy points on FanDuel.
Right. That's kind of how I feel. All right. YouTube chat, Premium Slack. Start getting your questions in now. Let's build up a little bit of a queue. We've got 16 minutes to go until we get to lock. Oof. I am uncomfortable. Hate this, man. This is not a fun slate. We got a big one tomorrow, though. 11 gamer for you and I. So for everything that we feel about how like easy it is to at least put this one together, we're not getting that tomorrow. And it's going to be a train wreck.
What kind of dumb things are going to happen tomorrow? Everybody should play. They haven't played basketball for a week.
All of Toronto is already out.
And Bam's out.
Yeah. So
at least we know that ahead of time.
Yeah, I guess. Lucky us. Let's see.
I'm looking in Slack.
We're not getting anything, dude. Denny or Matthews? That's just Denny for me.
I don't really
I won't have any Matthews today.
I don't really like either of them, but I have a slight preference towards Denny. Denny's just largely been garbage this year.
Yeah, for sure. Andrew Kang with the super chat said, everyone sign up for Awesemo Plus chat. It's only $3 and you get cool emojis. Yeah, you guys should do that. I don't know what my messaging is officially for talking about subscribing to our YouTube channel, but we're going to have it, and I'm going to talk about it in the near future. I promise you this. But yeah, get those emojis.
There's a Brad Levine asked a showdown question, and I don't have that. I actually did build lineups, assuming that we were going to have to fill time to talk about the Spurs Mavericks game. I built showdown lineups for that. Did not build lineups for the Washington game, so I'm going to have to bring that up really quick.
How much Desmond Bane are you getting to so I can just like calm down?
I have him 35% on FanDuel and not very significant on DraftKings.
Okay, well then 42% is just going to be where I have to stay. I'm getting less Luka now. Like, this is not going the way that I would like it to.
What's making you get less Luka?
I have no idea, man. I can't remember. Like, every time I adjust somebody because I think that they suck, it's just creating another problem somewhere else. Not ideal, dude. Not ideal. All right, here we go. Better play. Morant, Murray, DeRozan. DraftKings question.
Let's see. Which of those guys do I have the most exposure to? Morant, Murray, and DeRozan.
Correct.
DeRozan for me now that Aldridge is out.
Okay. Let's see.
And also that he has a decent amount less ownership than Morant relative to a 2-game slate.
What do you think of Raul Neto?
Still bitter that he had that big game out of nowhere.
Yeah.
What was it
Sure.
like 12 days ago now?
Oh God, yeah, I guess it kind of was. Oh, Mo Wagner, get out of my lineups, dude.
Like Neto shouldn't be viable on the slate. There's so many good point guard options. Every position sucks kind of other than point guard today.
And now I'm just asking you questions based on my exposures. How much Porzingis do you have? Because he's sitting at a crisp 149 of 150 for me.
Yeah, he's in basically every lineup. The only reason that he isn't in 100% is because of some randomness, but it's over 90%.
Bane or Winslow on DraftKings?
Winslow on DraftKings.
Okay. Alrighty, what else we have coming in here? We got 12 minutes to go. Sima beats SSB with the super chat. Is Derek White playing?
Yes.
Supposed to.
How many minutes is he playing? Who knows? Because that is up to Pop's discretion. But I think he's a very good GPP play. I'm overweight on him.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. Well, I guess I should be more specific. I don't have a ton of him on FanDuel, but I do think that he is one of the 6 point guards that you can play on FanDuel.
He's a better play on DraftKings where he's 5,000.
That makes sense. Dylan Brooks is another guy that I can't stop from like showing up in my lineups, and I'd really like to stop it from showing up in my lineups as much as he is.
Is there anybody who's worse that gets a longer leash than Dylan Brooks? Like how do they just allow him to have a 27% usage rate and never make shots?
Like one of the shooting guards on the Grizzlies has to be decent, right? Like one of Brooks, Bane, or Melton has to be good.
I don't know that any of them have to be good.
Is that not how this works?
No, it's not how this works at all. Because they could just end up playing like Winslow more minutes, or like Tyus Jones can end up playing 22 minutes and be not viable, but be good enough where he takes away minutes and production from those other guys. I mean, I think Bane is still the best option relative to price of those guys, but I don't know. I don't think one of them has to be good.
I can't figure this slate out. It is hard. It is legitimately a hard slate. Okay, here we go. What do you think about not playing Robin Lopez at all on FanDuel and going over the field on DraftKings when submitting on Fantasy Cruncher?
Perfectly fine with me. That's what my build has.
Yeah. I need to just knock down KP a little bit, and I think I'm going to be close to locking this one down. Yeah, 96.7. That feels a little bit more sane.
As opposed to 99.
Yeah, kind of. The problem is, I think there are only 5 power forwards you can legitimately roster. 6, I guess. I'm assuming you have more Trey Lyles than I do. I don't really have any on FanDuel. I have Mo Wagner, Brandon Clark, Maxey, and Bertans, and that's it, along with, obviously, Porzingis.
I mean, the price tag is dumb for Trey Lyles at 4,700, but the price tag for Davis Bertans and Maxi Kleber are dumb also. I don't think there's that much that separates those 3 guys.
Yeah, you're probably right, honestly. I don't really just have a feel for any of this.
If this was a 3-game slate instead of a 2-game slate, none of those guys would be getting run for me.
Yeah, it's weird how true that is. Are you getting to slow-mo?
Slow-mo, yes, on FanDuel. And I haven't really rostered him much at all this year, but this is another one where you look at small forward in lineups that don't have Luka. Every other small forward is a garbage play on FanDuel. They all suck. They're all terrible plays.
Everything's bad, man. Everything is bad. All right, like, is that no? So like, I need more Jalen Brunson than that. This is the weirdest slate in a long time. White or Richardson on DraftKings? That's coming from Premium Slack.
Derek White.
Okay, that works for me. What's up with the YH projections? No Mavericks on there at all. You're tagging the wrong people here, brother. That's for EMAC. What else we got? Ja Morant or Westbrook or both?
Is there any other context to that?
Nope.
I like both of them, so I think both be the answer. I mean, Westbrook is one of the highest priority plays for me on the slate, and that's on both sides.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm just ready to not look at it. The main priority of today's slate is the fact that we don't have to late swap, or at least we shouldn't have to late swap, at least not with any sort of real aggressive manner. I hope Luka's well rested after waltzing his way through that skills competition
and the All-Star game.
True story. I'm just at a point now where I don't know which value play to like. I'm getting a lot of Bane, but when I stop getting a lot of Bane, I stop getting a lot of other good things. And maybe that's okay, but I don't feel like Desmond Bane should be in 50% of my lineups.
No, that was why you have in 42%, I think was the number you said before. Yeah, just a much more sane number of Desmond Bane.
But every time I address Bane and I address Brooks, I don't get more of anybody else that has a pulse.
By the way, we should talk about this because we have a SuperDraft question in the premium Slack chat. Yavenly asked you, I'm going to say he asked us, though, because I want to feel better about myself. Thoughts on Wagner on SuperDraft 1.95 multiplier?
Ooh, I assume he ranks pretty high. Let me pull up my SuperDraft projections and I can let you know. Yeah, so he does not rank highly. He is 29th overall for me right now. He's basically a non-play as far as I'm concerned. Number one SuperDraft play today for me, Russell Westbrook, 1.2x multiplier.
Yeah, I think Westbrook is on a tier of his own, and then there's like Porzingis and Beal are in the next tier, and then other guys after that. But yeah, Mo Wagner, I'm looking at Alex's projections right now. Wagner is nowhere near consideration.
I'm getting excited to watch basketball. The swings are going to be I love slates like this where both games are going on largely, like most of it is at the same time. So the score, like the standings are pretty much showing you where you really are. Like you'll lag a little bit if you're heavier on the 8:30 game, but I prefer this sort of balance.
Question right here that we got in the Slack. I already know what your answer is going to be. Somebody asked if Luka Samanic is a good play. I gave Samanic 0 minutes. Do you also give Samanic 0 minutes?
Yes. No minutes for Samanic. Even if he plays, he's not playing minutes to be viable.
Yeah, that was why I was just wondering if you also gave him 0 minutes.
Like he could play up to 8 and I wouldn't be surprised at all. And it wouldn't be important in any way. Well, I think this is just going to have to be what my exposures are, and I hate it. I truly do.
There's no number of basically any player outside of the obvious ones to feel comfortable with on the slate, though.
No. And the real problem for me is going to be when Kristaps Porzingis gets like late scratched at 8:01 and I just burn it all down. The bottom of shooting guard is the tricky part for me. I'm really nervous about Patty Mills or Tim Hardaway Jr.
Patty Mills more so now that Aldridge is out and there's more usage on the second unit.
I think I'm just ready to lock this bad boy down. I probably have too much Kelden Johnson, but I'm a stand for that dude. I really am. I've adjusted so many projections that if I drop Kelden Johnson from 25.9 to 25, he leaves 15% of my lineups.
That'll happen on a 2-game slate. I always think it's funny when there's a guy who's like, oh, I'm massively overweight to him. And then you give him like one less minute. And then it's like, I'm underweight to him now.
Yeah. Well, that's happening aggressively for me right now. And I'm running out of options. So that's just going to have to be it. Desmond Bane, come on down. You are the most important person on the slate for me today.
You know what's funny? You know what you're really looking for probably more so than anything is just for the score to give Desmond Bane a couple of steals. It doesn't even matter if he gets them or not. You just need the score to give them to him.
Yeah.
There's so many slates that are decided like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's this slate and these large contests will almost assuredly come down to who had the outlier performances in stocks.
Mm-hmm.
That's how this works. And that is gross.
Yeah. The TJ McConnell game.
Oh God. That's just disgusting. Disgusting.
9 steals. By the way, there's no way all of those were steals. I didn't watch all of them, but there's no way that every single one of those was a steal. There was definitely some gifts from the score.
7:57, guys. 3 minutes to go. 2.5 minutes to go. So get your lineups in. I'm in right now. I've got everything in. Questions at this point are, a fool's errand. So I'm going to hit you with my exposures on my most exposed guys. I want to get your live thoughts. What do you say?
Let's do it. I know one of them is going to be Desmond Bane.
Point guard. I have 3 guys with very sizable ownership: Russell Westbrook, Ja Morant, and Jalen Brunson. I am quite under the field on DeJounte Murray. I am not comfortable with that experience.
It's not a good price point for him. And I do think that Ja Morant is a far superior play, but because I gave Murray slight bumps once Aldridge got ruled out, that made me a little bit underweight to the field on him, but not wildly different than the field.
Okay. Shooting guard. Dylan Brooks, DeMar DeRozan, Desmond Bane, the 3 guys I have the most. I am quite a bit under the field on Bradley Beal.
No difference here.
I have basically 5 small forwards, all in the 30 to 45% range. Luka, Keldon Johnson, DFS, Justice Winslow, and Rui. I'm just a hair under the field on Kyle Anderson.
I'm surprised you have that much Justice Winslow on FanDuel.
So am I. So am I. Maybe I won't. All right. I took off a quarter point of his. No, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, we're like already at lock.
Yeah, I don't want to go down this journey. Yeah, I'm not happy about it either. Just to be clear. Okay, this all seems fine. Power forward, I have 95% Kristaps Porzingis. Mo Wagner, Brandon Clark, Maxey, and Bertans are all basically split in the mid-20s. I don't have anybody else.
My ownership is so Porzingis in almost every single lineup, and then it's almost exactly split amongst every other power forward. That's the amount of confidence I have in everybody else.
Yeah. 65% Joe Val, 35% Jakob Poeltl. Technically, I have 2% Lopez too, but I don't really care about that.
I have a little bit more Lopez, but still wildly overweight relative to what the field has on Lopez. Like I was saying before, Lopez is a very good play, I think, on DraftKings for this slate. Not so much on FanDuel.
Closing it out with a super chat. It's not going to matter, but I always love these questions. Westbrook, Morant, Porzingis, or Luka, Westbrook, and Kleber?
Wait, did one of them have four players in it?
No, but both of them had Westbrook. Morant and
Okay.
Porzingis, or Luka and Maxey? It's not even close.
It's it has to be Porzingis on FanDuel.
Yeah. I don't know if it's FanDuel or DraftKings, but I also don't care. There's no chance that I'm taking Luka and Maxey over Morant and Porzingis. Those things aren't comparable.
That takes us to lock.
We're locked, and we got to get out of here. Thank you to everybody watching the show. Go tune in to PGA Live Before Lock, which is kicking off immediately after this. Different link, though. We don't stay on the same one. Greg, any final thoughts before we leave?
No. Happy NBA's back.
I agree completely. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, notification bell, go watch the golf show, and shout out to SuperDraft for being the presenting sponsor. You're getting an extra half hour out of us tomorrow for SuperDraft, so we are going to dive in big time. Actually, no, we're not. It's Jock Market. Sorry, guys, no SuperDraft tomorrow. I'm going to go because I haven't done shows in a while and I'm rusty. Bye. Get out of a rhythm, man. It sucks.